Qin, you must introduce me. As he spoke, Professor Li's eyes were glued to the drawings, flipping through them eagerly, not wanting to miss any details. With his professional expertise, he understood that these were feasible three-dimensional designs, ingeniously restructuring the current lithium battery architecture and dramatically increasing energy efficiency by over 10 times. I had a sudden inspiration, Qin Emo said, forcing the words out. Upon hearing this, Professor Li was taken aback. Mr. Qin, weren't you in business? Before Professor Li arrived, he had naturally inquired about Qin Mo's identity from Tan Buyin and learned that Qin Mo was a promising young entrepreneur, completely unrelated to the field of science. Qin Mo had already thought of an excuse and scratched his head, saying, "It's like this. Recently I've been working on upgrading the power supply for Qin Family Village and ordered a large number of solar photovoltaic panels. I initially thought I could replace the traditional power grid with this green energy. However, after installation, I realized that the biggest issue is not the generation of electricity, but rather the storage of energy." Professor Li, being an expert in this field, started nodding in agreement as soon as he heard this. Exactly. The reason why photovoltaic and wind energy are difficult to replace hydropower and thermal power generation is primarily due to storage issues. Hydropower and thermal power generation can easily control the flow of water or the burning of coal, allowing for stable electricity output to meet the needs of residents and businesses. However, wind and solar energy are not that simple. The timing of wind and sunlight is beyond human control. On sunny days, the electricity generated could be enough for Qin Family Village for 3 days, but on cloudy days, it might not even meet half a day's demand. To solve this problem, we need to store electricity generated during good weather for use during bad weather. This is the role of energy storage. However, the current efficiency of energy storage is alarmingly low, only at about 10 to 20. What could have lasted for 3 days is reduced to just a few hours, which cannot meet demand, and this is a technical barrier faced by the entire industry. But Mr. Qin's design has the potential to break this global technical barrier. Professor Li's eyes sparkled with excitement. If this works out, it could even lead to a Nobel Prize. This is an achievement no scholar can resist. Yes, that's why I asked Professor Tan to help find you. Qin Mo knew that his undergraduate level knowledge was insufficient to develop this new energy storage battery. He would need at least a professional R&D team of 100 people. You found the right person. Professor Li was not modest at all. When it came to a project that had the potential for a Nobel-level breakthrough, he couldn't afford to be hypocritical and let it slip away. Otherwise, he'd regret it deeply. Professor Li looked at Qin Mo seriously and said, "I can help you secure sponsorship and apply for research funding for this project's R&D part. I personally don't need any salary or compensation. I only have one request. When the product is launched, my team's name must be included in the research credits. Once this new battery is implemented, it will undoubtedly trigger a wave of energy innovation globally, and profits will certainly be substantial." However, Professor Li valued the recognition more. At his age, he had everything he needed, but the opportunity to leave a mark in scientific history was rare. Seizing this chance for lasting recognition was more important than making an extra billion. Pleasure to work together. Qin Mo was not one to hesitate, and immediately stood up, extending his hand to the other party. Since the other party wasn't discussing profit sharing or intellectual property ratios, Qin Mo naturally wouldn't waste time on those trivial matters. Although the other party said they wouldn't charge a salary, Qin Mo would definitely pay according to industry standards. With a hot-selling chicken product in his hands, he could earn millions every minute. So how could he do without Professor Li's salary? Upon hearing Qin Mo's straightforward words, Professor Li Peng immediately shook Qin Mo's hand, wishing for a pleasant cooperation. This handshake had already established the broad framework for both parties. Next, Li Peng hurriedly gathered the most elite individuals from his students, colleagues, and network to form a team. This team would operate under the name of the Qin Family Village Company, and everyone would have to sign confidentiality agreements, starting work in the office space that Qin Mo had freed up, aiming to produce results before the year end. Chapter 219. The concerns of the elderly at the entrance of Qin Family Village. The elderly had finished their breakfast and were chatting idly. What? There are now more than 10 PhDs in our Qin Family Village? Yes, Sengu, you didn't know? Xiao Mo has cleared an entire floor of office space these days, specifically arranged for those professors to conduct research. Qin Huai was explaining the situation to Song Chunmei. Others nearby, who had heard about it, nodded in agreement. Yes, Sengu. The knowledge level in our Qin Family Village is probably ahead of several streets in the nearby areas. Xiao Mo is indeed capable. The elderly beamed with pride. In their remote mountain village, there had previously been hardly any university students, let alone professors or PhDs. As the elderly chatted and laughed, their brows suddenly furrowed. That was because the construction site for the office building and residential area had begun operations. On one side stood a towering modern office building with 60 floors, and on the other side was a massive community project expected to accommodate thousands of families. Currently, There were nearly 1,000 construction workers on site, and the noise and disruption were unimaginable. The elderly had come to this spot to chat, partly to avoid the construction noise. But even at the village entrance, it was hard to escape the oncoming noise. Sigh, there are gains and losses. The village has become lively, but it's too noisy. Forget the noise. Every time the piling machine falls, I think it's an earthquake. To build high-rise buildings, deep foundations have to be laid. The vibrations from the heavy drops on the ground are so strong that covering one's ears at home doesn't help. The entire ground shakes. However, the elderly also knew this was unavoidable. For the prosperity of Qin family village, this little bit of patience was necessary. I can't stand this noise. Uncle Wu held his chest, having previously suffered a stroke due to high blood pressure. If it weren't for the advanced medical equipment that Qin Mo brought from Germany, he probably wouldn't have survived the surgery. Now, months later, his vascular issues had finally improved, but after half a month of enduring the construction noise, his heart was starting to give him trouble again. Fifth brother, don't scare me. Liangping, hold on. Quickly go find the kids to help. Grandpa San and Grandma Chi were busy organizing things. Fortunately, with so many people coming and going in Qin family village, someone soon notified Qin Mo and the other young people. When Qin Mo arrived at the village entrance with the ambulance from the village clinic, Qin Liangping had already caught his breath and was resting on a chair at the small food street, attended by several elderly people nearby. Quick, take Grandpa Wu to the hospital. Qin Mo instructed the doctors and nurses to carry the stretcher as he jumped out of the ambulance. When he reached him, he saw Qin Liangping wave his hand, saying, I'm fine, just a bit of palpitations. There's no need for the stretcher. Palpitations can vary in severity. Qin Mo exchanged a glance with the nearby doctor, who understood and approached Qin Liangping to check on him. The doctor, newly hired and knowledgeable in both traditional and Western medicine, didn't have much equipment at the moment and directly took Qin Liangping's pulse. It turned out there was nothing serious. Just a fast heartbeat and some anxiety. The doctor quickly concluded. Qin Mo sighed in relief and asked, Grandpa, what is bothering you? Before Qin Liangping could respond, the elderly people interjected, what else could it be? It's the noise. Yes, Xiao Mo, we understand that construction comes with noise. But there are just too many construction sites right now, and with all this noise, we can't escape it even when we come to the village entrance. As they spoke, their voices inadvertently raised a bit, as the background noise from the construction site was still present. Watching the elderly shout, Qin Mo realized how serious the noise issue was. Am I being a bit hasty? Qin Mo thought carefully and acknowledged that there indeed were too many projects in Qin family village at the moment. However, the 60-story office building could be postponed. While the residential buildings couldn't wait, there were over 100 relatives returning to the village, and the number of employees at the Qin family village company was increasing, making the small dormitories nearly unlivable. Regardless, the concerns of the elderly were definitely Qin Mo's top priority. Since the construction was now affecting them, he decided not to overthink it, and immediately called Song Qingfeng to halt the work. I'm sorry, Grandpa and Grandma, I didn't consider this properly. After hanging up, Qin Mo apologized to the elderly. That's not necessary, but it is indeed much quieter with the construction stopped. The elderly felt a bit embarrassed seeing Qin Mo sincerely apologize. Everything he did was for the development of Qin family village, yet they had previously vowed to contribute to it, and now they were struggling to endure some noise. While they could withstand physical and mental fatigue, this noise was unbearable. Many of them had heart conditions, and the pounding of the pile driving sounded like it could shatter their hearts. Now that Qin Mo had ordered the construction sites to stop driving piles, the elderly felt much more comfortable. Xiao Mo, just let them listen for a while. I'll be fine in a bit, Qin Liangping said. Worried that a prolonged halt in construction would impact Qin Mo's schedule and future plans, the elderly nodded in agreement, saying, yes, Xiao Mo, just take a break for an hour or two each day to help us relax. They had no choice. If they could endure, they certainly would. But working on the construction site for over 10 hours a day was truly beyond their limits. Seeing the shame on their faces filled Qin Mo with guilt. He hadn't expected that his construction efforts would cause the elderly to suffer. If it weren't for the issues with his grandfather today, they would likely have continued to endure. Grandpa and Grandma, don't worry. I'll talk to Ba Song to see how we can handle this better. After confirming that his grandfather was fine, Qin Mo had the doctor take him for a more detailed examination while he rushed to the construction site to discuss the details with Song Qingfeng. What? The noise made the elderly's heart problems act up? Song Qingfeng was startled. He knew that in Qin Mo's eyes, the well-being of the elderly was far more important than making money. However, he hesitated and said, Boss Qin, we can't stop the project indefinitely. I have hundreds of workers, and stopping for a day costs over 100,000. If we dismiss these workers, it will be even more troublesome to get them back later. As Song Qingfeng spoke, he observed Qin Mo's expression, fearing that he might get angry. Fortunately, Qin Mo understood the situation. Seeing that Qin Mo wasn't angry, Song Qingfeng continued. The noise issue will persist throughout the construction period. The noise that could trigger heart issues for the elderly must be the sound from the foundation work. How about we work overtime to finish the foundation as soon as possible? Song Qifeng provided his analysis and suggestion. The noise from regular renovations might travel 100 meters at most, but the sound from foundation work was indeed terrifying. Heavy equipment weighing several tons could shake the ground, sending vibrations for thousands of meters, making it impossible to escape within the vicinity of the village, regardless of any soundproofing measures. Pondering for a moment, Qin Mo asked, "If we stop other parts and focus entirely on the foundation work, how long would it take?" The construction had already been underway for over a month. According to the original plan, it was supposed to be completed before the Spring Festival next year, after which the workers would return home for the holiday. If they paused other projects now, it would take another 2 months to finish, Song Qifeng replied. Frowning, Qin Mo thought, 2 months? How would the elderly manage to hold on? Let me think about it, he said without giving a clear response, leaving the construction site and heading to the village hospital. The former Dr. Zhou Ying was now the director of the village hospital. He was startled to hear about Qin Liangping's recent troubles and rushed to the cardiology department to check, confirming there were no major issues. Just as he returned to his office, Qin Mo arrived. "Mr. Qin," Zhou Ying said, quickly getting up to greet him. "My grandfather is okay, right? He's fine. Just has an irregular heartbeat and needs to rest quietly for a day." However, Zhou Ying lived in the village and had also been disturbed by the noise recently. But these matters weren't his responsibility, so he hesitated to say more. Qin Mo had a hunch about what the other party wanted to say and proactively asked, "Is the noise really that harmful to the elderly?" "Yes," came the reply. "The elderly already have shallow sleep and find it hard to get a full night's rest. They often need intermittent breaks or naps. The noise from the construction site starts around 8 or 9 in the morning and doesn't stop until sunset. This makes it difficult for the elderly to rest in between. In the short term, it might not be a big deal, but over time, insufficient rest can lead to various problems. What about the young people?" Qin Mo pressed further. Zhou Ying pondered for a moment and said, "Young people definitely can't take a nap at noon either, but we can sleep soundly through the night, so our rest is sufficient. Simply put, the noise won't directly harm our bodies." Qin Mo understood at this point. The noise primarily affects the rest of the elderly. Their sleep is fragmented. Unlike young people who can sleep through the night to recharge their energy for the day, sleep-deprived elderly individuals are somewhat like young people who stay up all night. Experiencing palpitations or discomfort is quite common. Would it help if I asked the construction site to stop work during lunch? It's hard to say. Some elderly people might take a nap after lunch, but others prefer to catch up on sleep in the afternoon. The main issue is that elderly people don't fall asleep as easily as the young, so an environment where they can nap whenever they feel tired is ideal. Hearing this, Qin Mo felt a bit overwhelmed. It seemed this problem was indeed difficult to solve. Just then, his phone rang. It was a call from Song Xian. "Mr. Qin, the tourist visa you asked me to help with has been processed. I've sent it to you via express delivery and called to remind you." Since Qin Mo invested in a food factory in Qin Family Village under the name of an overseas company, his collaboration with the bank where Song Xian worked had deepened significantly. To take good care of this key client, the bank essentially assigned Song Xian as Qin Mo's personal assistant. Previously, when Qin Mo received a cruise ship from the system, he planned to take the elderly to enjoy the sea. However, being in a remote area, the villagers faced numerous hurdles to obtain a visa. The elderly at home couldn't even recognize all the characters in Chinese, let alone English, so Qin Mo didn't bother to make them go through the hassle. Later, after acquiring ownership of a private island as a reward from the system, things changed. As the island owner, Qin Mo could decide who could land there. Coupled with the ownership of the overseas company, he had Song Xian help the elderly apply for visas to go abroad. He had been so busy that he almost forgot about this matter and didn't expect it to be completed already. What a coincidence. Qin Mo had always wanted to take the elderly to see the sea, considering that the biggest body of water they might have encountered in their lives was probably the stream behind the mountain. Now, with the noise from the construction site bothering them, taking the elderly out to sea would not only allow them to use their own cruise ship, but also visit their own small island, while escaping the noise disturbance. Spending a month or 2 on their own island would surely help the elderly recover from any fatigue. By the time the foundation work on Song Qifeng's side is completed, it will be just in time for the New Year preparations back in the village. Everything is perfectly timed, simply wonderful. Qin Mo excitedly muttered to himself as he left the village hospital, calling out to several young people including Qin Tianrui, Qin Fengyu, and Zhang Tingting. Take the elderly on a trip to avoid the noise? Upon hearing Qin Mo's suggestion, both of them sparkled with excitement. They had grown up in the mountains, and although they had lived in the city for a while, they had never seen the ocean in their lives. As a teenage girl, Zhang Tingting was at an age filled with romantic dreams, and her eyes lit up even more when Qin Mo mentioned cruise ships and private islands. "But I can't. Qin Yangyang still has classes," Qin Tianrui sighed. "Yeah, I know it's inconvenient for you, so I won't push you this time, Qin Emo replied. Fully aware of his brother's situation, he called Qin Tianrui over to entrust him with the affairs of Qin family village. What? You call me over to work? Qin Tianrui's eyes widened in disbelief. Ha! Qin Fengyu and Zhang Tingting nearby laughed until their stomachs hurt. Qin Emo, with a straight face, said, Brother, didn't you say before that you wanted to achieve something big? Now the vast business of Qin family village is in your hands. You need to hold up as the vice president. Qin Emo was not exaggerating when he referred to the vast business. Currently, just the chicken product line of Qin family village has a monthly sales revenue of tens of millions, with the factory running at full capacity every day. Additionally, there are office building projects, snack streets, and shopping mall leasing management, all adding up to a business turnover of over 100 million a month for Qin family village. After Qin Mo's persuasion, Qin Tianrui ultimately accepted this responsibility with enthusiasm. According to Qin Mo, this was a 2-month trial period for Qin Tianrui to lead the Qin family village group. However, this was also Qin Mo's genuine intention, given his own personality. He was not suited for long-term management, and such daily affairs should be handled by a general manager. Qin Mo's role should be more like a chairman, making decisions on important matters. After receiving this encouragement, Qin Tianrui was naturally invigorated. Qin Fengyu and Zhang Tingting were excited about the upcoming sea trip as well, and they were tasked by Qin Mo to prepare a travel plan for the journey. Qin Mo claimed it was to train their information-gathering abilities, but in reality, he was just being lazy. Organizing a trip for dozens of elderly people was no small task. All expenses had to be arranged in advance. They also needed to prepare for any potential seasickness or minor accidents, as it often took days to return to shore once the cruise was out at sea. Qin Fengyu and Zhang Tingting soon realized the challenges of this task after taking it on. They knew nothing about traveling by cruise and were unfamiliar with maritime laws and regulations. Qin Mo immediately arranged for them to visit Hong Kong first to board a ship and gather information, and then to consult with local travel service companies there for further details. By the time everything was ready, 3 days had already passed. Xiaomo, the construction site has been halted for 3 days now. There's really no need for that. Yes, Xiaomo, my heart condition hasn't acted up lately, and the doctor has checked and said there's no problem. Xiaomo, we can't let the development of Qin family village stop just because of us old folks. Exactly. Living like this is uncomfortable for us, and we would just be a burden on you young people. The construction has been halted for 3 days. And although Boss Song has been losing 100,000 in wages each day without complaining, the elders of Qin family village have already approached Qin Mo. To the elders, if their presence causes the construction site to halt and affects the development of Qin family village, they would feel like the culprits of the village. Indeed, the construction of Qin family village cannot just be halted like this. Qin Mo nodded in agreement. The elders were taken aback, not expecting Qin Mo to be so agreeable this time, and then said, then let Boss Song and the others resume work. Not yet. We have to wait until we set off, and then Boss Song and the others will naturally resume work. Qin Mo announced the travel plans. Everyone should go home and pack their things. We will set off tonight, first to Danyang City, and then take a flight to a certain region. Wait, we need to escape to that region just because of a little noise? The elders were stunned by this arrangement, finding it absurd. There's no need to waste that money. How much do the plane tickets cost for so many people? If it really doesn't work, why not rent a large courtyard in the county town and all squeeze in together for a while? Third Grandpa suggested. The noise issue was indeed bothersome, but it didn't warrant such a big effort to go to that region. Does Qin Mo not understand the temperament of his elders? He knew they would be unhappy about spending money on a trip, so he had already prepared an explanation. It's free. I requested it from the overseas owner of the Qin family village food factory. Is it that overseas tycoon who invested in our Qin family village? How generous of him to invite us on a trip. Xiaomo, are you going to have to pay some price for this? The biggest change in Qin family village recently was the rise of the food factory, and because of this factory, many villagers returning home made the place lively again. So the elders naturally knew of that foreign tycoon whom they had never met. This is an employee benefit, no price to pay. Grandpa and Grandma, don't forget. Our villagers are the ones working at the food factory, helping him earn so much money each year. That's right. Without our young people from Qin family village, this food factory wouldn't even be up and running. The elders took pride in this, acknowledging that while the investment was from the overseas tycoon, the key to the food factory's success was the local villagers. As for the chicken raw materials, they were sourced from their own farms. Without the affordable and high-quality chickens from their farms, the food factory couldn't implement such competitive pricing strategies. However, we are not employees of the food factory. Why would that foreign tycoon think to invite us on a trip? The elders were reluctant to take advantage of the young people's benefits. If it's really that overseas tycoon inviting employees on a trip, Xiaomo, you should leave the spots for the young people who have truly contributed. Qin Mo smiled and said, this is the benefit I specifically fought for you. Uncle Pang and Aunt Lu will naturally receive generous year-end bonuses as rewards. This benefit is for the elderly in our Qin family village. I told that foreign businessman that the noise from the construction site affects your rest. Oh, isn't the noise caused by the office buildings and residential areas we are building ourselves? Isn't the residential area something the foreign businessman insisted on constructing? He wants to properly accommodate the employees of the food factory, and having supporting housing will attract more talent. Workers are willing to stay in dormitories, but will future executives, after expansion, really live with ordinary workers? Upon hearing this, the elderly people began to understand, but there were still some concerns. They wondered if it was fair to take such a big advantage from others. What about the debt of gratitude? Are you going to make Xiao and Mo pay it back later? What debt of gratitude, Grandpa and Grandma? You still don't understand. Forget it, I'll just say it plainly. That businessman is unhappy because you all are slowing down the progress of the project. Qin Mo pretended to be angry, portraying the foreign businessman as inhumane. I told him to stop work for 2 hours every noon to let you rest, but he insisted on completing the project within this year. It's already October. And if they want to finish on time, not only will they have to work through lunch, but they'll also have to work until 7 or 8 at night. The elderly were taken aback. In their impression, the overseas investor of Qin Family Village had always been a dignified figure. Now, with such a rush to complete the work, they truly feared they couldn't withstand the noise for over 10 hours a day. Qin Mo feigned anger and said, I certainly can't let him disturb the peace of Qin Family Village and make you uncomfortable. I hung up on him during the call. Hearing this, Qin Huai quickly advised, No, we still need that person to invest in the development of Qin Family Village. Qin Liangping also chimed in. Yes, it's understandable that businessmen seek profit. It's not unreasonable to pursue efficiency. They were worried that Qin Mo would really have a falling out with the businessman, which could impact the village's development. And that wouldn't be worth it. Chapter 222. Airport Lounge. Listening to the elderly, Qin Mo sighed. He continued, I thought of this, which is why I finally settled for this compromise. That guy isn't short on money. He could have just invited you all to travel. Upon hearing this, the elderly had no reason to refuse. In this situation, going out to play would mean helping Qin Family Village. So one by one, they hurried back home to pack their bags. Seeing that the elderly had finally agreed to set off, Qin Mo also breathed a sigh of relief. In this day and age, getting his own elders to spend money to enjoy a trip was not an easy task. After everyone packed their bags, the bus that Qin Mo arranged arrived at the village entrance. They were to first take the bus to Danyang City, then transfer to the intercity light rail to the provincial capital, as only the provincial capital had an airport that could fly to Xiangjiang. After a long journey, Qin Mo finally brought the elderly to the provincial airport. Wow! As soon as they stepped into the airport, the elderly were amazed by the vastness of the place. Looking up, the enormous glass dome let in sunlight, which fell onto the shiny ceramic tiles and reflected dazzling rays. The elderly moved cautiously, afraid of dirtying the floor tiles. As they stepped inside, the various modern facilities in the airport made them feel like they had entered another world. Huge electronic display screens rolled with flight information from around the globe, and escalators slowly ascended, each detail revealing the splendor and convenience of a modern metropolis. The elderly were so captivated that they accidentally bumped into 2 well-dressed women. I'm sorry, Zhang Yue quickly apologized after the collision. The 2 women turned around and, upon seeing the group from Kanjiakan, immediately frowned in disdain. What are you staring at on that sign? Aren't your eyes meant for looking at the path? Zhang Yue felt her face flush. It was their first time at an airport, and they were indeed curious, which led to the accident. She continued to apologize. Sorry. It's our first time here. Upon hearing this, the women's contempt deepened. So, it's just a bunch of country bumpkins. Come on, Wei, don't waste time talking to them. Another woman chimed in, right? What era is it? Still coming to the airport for the first time and getting lost in an electronic sign? The elderly felt embarrassed as they were scolded, but Qin Mo frowned and stepped forward. So what if it's their first time at the airport? They apologized for bumping into you. So why the attitude? What attitude are we showing? The 2 women, who preferred not to be bullied, immediately became defensive. You don't even understand respect for the elderly. Talking to you is a waste of time. Qin Mo was too lazy to engage further and turned to the elderly. Grandpa and Grandma, let us go wait in the lounge. Is there a special room for waiting for the flight? They asked. At that moment, the 2 glamorous women burst into laughter. Of course there is. Look over there, the place that says lounge. They even have free food and drinks. You might as well take advantage of it. The elderly, hearing this, didn't suspect a thing, and, not noticing the mocking smiles, took it seriously, replying, Wow. This airport is just like our village, with a buffet too. Ha ha ha, your village has a buffet? Then hurry over, don't miss it. The women's faces were full of mockery. They knew that the lounge was reserved for VIP passengers in business class, and economy class passengers could not enter. They had intentionally sent the elderly there just to see them turned away. Chin Mo, watching the two women's malicious smiles, knew exactly what they were up to. Little clowns, he muttered as he passed by them. Hearing this, the women were about to lose their tempers, but by then, the elderly had already reached the entrance of the lounge. The women, seeing this, decided not to rush into an argument with Chin Mo, instead wearing mocking smiles as they waited for the spectacle. As expected, the elderly were soon stopped by the ground staff at the entrance of the lounge. You need to show your ticket to enter? The tickets are with Xiao Mo. The elderly folks were stopped at the entrance and waved at Chin Mo. As Chin Mo walked over, the two women followed at a distance, sarcastically saying, "Oh, it seems your old man really thinks he can get in. How do you plan to comfort them?" "What else can I say? Just the truth," Chin Mo replied. A group of rural old men coming to the city for the first time, thinking they can sit in business class? The mocking comments came from the two women nearby. Chin Mo smiled and ignored the two clowns, stepping forward to take out the elderly folks' documents and tickets from his backpack. After checking the tickets, the attendant at the entrance quickly put on a bright smile, stepped aside, and welcomed the business class guests to the lounge. The airport staff were really beautiful. Isn't this what people call flight attendants? And they are so polite. The elderly folks happily walked into the lounge, unaware that the two women behind them were left dumbfounded. One of them couldn't believe her eyes, and in surprise, asked her companion, "Wait, how did they get in? Is the airline having a special promotion today?" The two exchanged glances for a few seconds, then mustered the courage to walk over as well. The attendant who had just welcomed Chin's family approached and asked, "Hello, ladies. May I see your tickets, please?" The two women took out their tickets from their bags. The attendant took a look and awkwardly smiled. "I'm sorry, ladies, but our VIP lounge is only for business class passengers. You need to wait in the boarding hall for the economy class." At that moment, other passengers outside the lounge heard this and turned to glance over. The faces of the two women instantly turned beet red. They had just wanted to see the elderly folks being embarrassed, but now they found themselves the ones in the spotlight. The two hurriedly questioned the attendant. "Then how did you let those old men in?" "They are business class guests, so naturally, they can enter," the attendant replied. "They're just a bunch of country folks. It's their first time flying today. How could they afford business class?" One woman couldn't believe this explanation. The other woman, however, suddenly had a realization. Pointing at the attendant and shouting, "I get it. She's also from that village with those old men, abusing her position for personal gain." Chapter 223. The amused flight attendant. The two thought they had caught the attendant on a flaw, and their tone grew louder with anger and embarrassment. The supervisor in charge of the ground staff heard the commotion from afar and quickly jogged over to handle the situation. He pointed at his name tag to identify himself before speaking. "Ladies, how can I assist you? I want to file a complaint." One of the women shouted at the attendant. This person used her position to let a bunch of country bumpkins into the VIP lounge while shutting us out. The male supervisor listened to the accusation and turned to look at the attendant. The ground staff quickly shook her head and said, "Supervisor, there's no such thing. I don't know the person who just went in. I'm just following the rules." The male supervisor frowned as he listened to both sides arguing. However, he was familiar with his subordinate, and it was clear that the ground staff was a local. How could she possibly let someone from her village in, as the two women claimed? He intervened. "Ladies, our staff does not engage in favoritism. To enter the VIP lounge, one must have purchased a business class ticket. You may have misunderstood." "Impossible," the two female passengers exclaimed sharply. "Those rural bumpkins we've never seen at the airport could afford business class. There are over 10 of them. The ticket prices would exceed 100,000. Upon hearing this, the male supervisor began to see some logic in their argument. No matter how wealthy a family was, they wouldn't buy business class tickets for a group of elderly villagers. He turned to his female subordinate and asked who had just entered the lounge, where they were headed, and what class ticket they had purchased. Before the ground staff could respond, the two women sneered. "What else is there to ask? She'll definitely say the other party bought a business class ticket. I don't believe that for a second. It's all electronic now. Just check on your tablet, and you'll see." Another woman chimed in. "Exactly. I heard that group of old men mention Chin Family Village, and calling that person Xiao Mo. That guy's name is Chin Mo, right? Don't try to fool us by randomly pointing to a business class passenger." The male supervisor furrowed his brow at this point. It was clear he sensed that these two women were not to be trifled with. He said sternly, "Ladies, we cannot disclose passenger information to you. If there are any issues, I will handle the verification." The two women laughed coldly. "Heh, you're all from the same company, trying to shield each other?" Just then, Chin Mo happened to return from the VIP lounge. Upon seeing Chin Mo, the two women practically leaped up, their animosity palpable as they shouted, "That's him. That's the guy who brought that group into the VIP lounge. Look at him. His entire outfit couldn't cost more than 300. How could he afford business class?" They scrutinized Chin Mo again, feeling more confident about their judgment. The male supervisor couldn't help but glance at Chin Mo as well. Noticing that his clothes indeed didn't seem to be from any high-end brands, he turned back and shot a glare at his ground staff, but she remained calm. Having confirmed there were no issues with Chin Mo and his Group S tickets, the male supervisor was puzzled. At this moment, he just wanted to defuse the situation and approach Chin Mo, saying, "Sir, sorry to bother you, but there seems to be an issue. May I take another look at your ticket?" The supervisor's tone was sincere, and Chin Mo didn't sense any hostility. He was just curious. Look again? Didn't that female staff just check it? At this point, a stylish woman watching the scene couldn't help but interject, "Huh, what's the matter? Afraid your VIP lounge entry will be discovered?" Chin Mo turned his gaze toward the two women, and just by looking at their expressions, he understood what was happening. The clowns were indeed acting like clowns. Chin Mo shook his head with a light smile, reaching into his backpack to retrieve the flight tickets for inspection again. The male supervisor took the more than 10 tickets from Chin Mo's hand and was startled after a glance. All the tickets were first class? His voice rose a few notches in shock. The two women beside him, who were waiting to see Chin Mo's embarrassment, were left speechless upon hearing this. More than 10 first-class tickets? Didn't that mean he had booked the entire first-class section? It's known that a large aircraft typically has only about 10 seats in first class, and even business class wouldn't exceed 30 seats. The flight Chin Mo was on was an international flight heading to a foreign destination after a stop in a certain city, which explained the availability of more than 10 first-class seats. "I apologize, Mr. Chin. Is there something you need after leaving the lounge? It's not boarding time yet." After seeing the boarding passes in Chin Mo's hand, the male supervisor's expression changed. These first-class tickets were several times more extravagant than business class. The cost of more than 10 tickets for a family trip exceeded 200,000, which is unaffordable for anyone who isn't genuinely wealthy. Looking at Chin Mo's age and attire, it was evident he was a low-key young master raised by a prominent family. The expressions of the two women had shifted from shock and embarrassment to one of regret. They spent their days on social media flaunting their lifestyles, gritting their teeth to travel on a budget, all in hopes of encountering a wealthy gentleman along the way. Now that they realized Chin Mo's true capabilities, they looked at his plain, unbranded clothing and felt a wave of humility wash over them. They wanted to approach him to make small talk. But recalling his earlier remark about clowns, their faces turned crimson, wishing they could find a hole to hide in. Once Chin Mo revealed his identity as a first-class passenger, he no longer needed to go out to buy medicine. The male supervisor, knowing Chin Mo was getting motion sickness medication for an elderly person, quickly dashed off to help purchase it. Upon boarding the plane, the elderly passengers soon discovered that there was no such thing as motion sickness at all. "We each have our own private booth, and there are individual TV screens and dining tables," they exclaimed. "My goodness, this is much more comfortable than taking a train." "Yeah. Over 10 years ago when I took the train to the capital, it was so crowded that there was hardly any room to stand, and here we can lie down." As first-class passengers, the elderly were naturally well served by the flight attendants, and after taking their seats, they couldn't help but chatter excitedly. "Incredible. These seats are no worse than those in our activity center. I touched it. It seems to be genuine leather. This airline is quite generous." The discussions among the elderly passengers left the flight attendants, who were serving them, dumbfounded. Normally, those who could afford first-class tickets wouldn't look like this. However, they didn't dare to ask any questions, maintaining polite service as the plane quickly took off. Chapter 224. First time at sea. Xiao Mo, they have steak here. Make sure to get a few more pieces so you don't miss out. Xiao Mo, they also have mung bean soup. I ordered 2 bowls. I'll share one with you. Wow, sitting on a plane is actually this comfortable. During mealtime, Chin Mo sat in his seat, preparing to take a nap. However, the elderly kept coming over to Chin Mo one after another. The first-class service included a menu with items to choose from, and after the old folks understood the menu, they were overjoyed, each one like a child discovering a new toy, and they didn't forget to share their excitement with Chin Mo. "Grandma Chi, I can't eat anymore. Didn't I just finish eating in the lounge before getting on the plane?" Chin Mo looked at Grandma Chi, who brought over a bowl of mung bean soup. Feeling both amused and helpless, Grandma Chi glared at Chin Mo disdainfully, saying, "You young man, why waste it? If you don't eat, it's just a waste." I asked, and they said food on this plane is free. At this point, Grandma Chi turned to confirm with a flight attendant beside her. "Crew member, isn't that right?" The flight attendant, with an awkward smile, replied, "Of course, it's all included in your ticket." While that was said, the flight attendant still didn't quite understand the situation. A first-class ticket costs at least tens of thousands, and with the amount of food they were consuming, it would take a week of eating to break even. So it was hard to say that the elderly were just looking for a bargain. Chin Mo couldn't help but laugh at the flight attendant's confused expression. This first-class ticket wasn't something Chin Mo bought himself. It was given to him by Qin Fengyu and Zhang Tingting after they discussed the itinerary with the travel agency when they arrived in Hong Kong. Upon hearing it was a large order for an international cruise, the agency immediately offered a first-class ticket as a gesture of goodwill to Chin Mo. However, even with the discounted tickets from the travel agency, it would still cost over 10,000 per person, which showed that they were quite generous to secure Qin Mo's business. But first class was indeed different from regular economy class. Qin Mo had flown once before, and the economy class was cramped, but now in first class. He had a private little booth to rest in. After a comfortable flight, as Qin Mo and the elderly stepped into Hong Kong airport, Qin Fengyu and Zhang Tingting were already waiting outside. Accompanying them was a middle-aged man in a suit. He had already learned from Qin Fengyu that Qin Mo was the one in charge of Qin Family Village. Upon seeing Qin Mo, he quickly approached with a smile, extending his hand for a handshake. "Mr. Qin, I've heard so much about you." The ordinary Mandarin of the Hong Kong resident was quite average, but he was making a good effort. Because of the first-class ticket, Qin Mo had a decent impression of this man, so he straightforwardly said, "Just leave the matters to your company. When can we depart?" "Really? You're leaving it to us?" The suited man was overjoyed and quickly waved for his assistant to come over, then said to Qin Mo, "My assistant has the complete itinerary on his computer. I'll give you a brief introduction right away." Qin Mo gently shook his head and looked at Qin Fengyu. Qin Fengyu naturally understood Qin Mo's meaning. The core task of this trip was to ensure the elderly had a comfortable 2-month vacation and then return after the foundation work in Qin Family Village was completed. "Brother Mo, don't worry. I've reviewed the process," Qin Fengyu assured him. Qin Mo nodded in response, no longer needing to elaborate. They would prepare to depart according to Fengyu's confirmed itinerary. Understood. The suited man beamed with joy and hurriedly left with his assistant to prepare the itinerary. This overseas cruise lasts for 2 months. Without mentioning anything else, just the fuel cost for Qin Mo's super cruise ship is over $1 million. The potential profits from the operations involved can easily reach over 100,000. Additionally, there are opportunities to earn from the teams needed to run the cruise, such as chefs, security personnel, and sailors. Each aspect has its profit potential, and by the end of the trip, there is a chance to make a profit of up to $1 million. However, the main source of profit for this project comes from ticket sales. The reason is that Qin Mo's cruise ship is so large that with only a dozen or 20 people from Qin Village boarding, the ship could feel deserted at night, with each person having hundreds of square meters of space. Qin Mo doesn't want the elderly to be startled at sea at night, and it wouldn't be realistic to claim that the cruise is sponsored by an overseas company with no passengers on board. Therefore, Qin Mo decided to turn this trip into a genuine travel group. Neither Qin Mo nor Qin Fengyu understands tourism operations, so they naturally entrusted these matters to a travel company in the region. For Qin Mo, this is a profitable venture, while for the travel company, it's an easy money-making opportunity. Essentially, Qin Mo provided a cruise ship and even the initial capital. They only need to assist with the arrangements and can earn substantial commissions. After receiving approval from the ship owner, Qin Mo, the travel company quickly assembled the cruise staff. However, the ticket sales process must be registered before proceeding, and it would take at least a week or 2 to sell all the tickets. During this time, Qin Mo certainly wouldn't let the elderly stay idle in the hotel, so he had already arranged an itinerary. Once everyone boarded, they would first visit Qin Mo's private island overseas. The travel company selected an auspicious day, and Qin Mo's large cruise ship officially set sail for the first time. The elderly waiting at the dock heard the massive roar of the ship's turbines, and then saw a luxurious cruise ship slowly glide out, stopping at the dock's walkway. Due to the ship's deep draft, it could easily run aground if too close to the dock. So everyone had to walk over 300 meters of connecting walkway to board. As they approached, they were awestruck by the colossal vessel, which is over 200 meters long. Most from Qin Village had never seen a cruise ship, let alone the ocean, and they were all filled with excitement. Once on board, the deck, elevated over 10 meters above sea level, was quickly occupied by the group. Even before the ship set sail, the unique height allowed them to see hundreds of meters out to sea. Is this the ocean? The elderly gathered by the deck railing, gazing at the distant sea, all entranced. At this moment, Qin Fengyu and Zhang Tingting were also buzzing with excitement, straining to look out to the sea. For the Qin villagers from the mountainous area, the shock of this scene could not simply be described as seeing the ocean on a television screen. Watching the group, filled with childlike excitement, brought Qin Mo immense satisfaction. Just being able to broaden the elderly's horizons made the trip worthwhile. However, the journey was just beginning. Qin Mo smiled and announced loudly, "Everyone, hold on tight. The Qin Family Village cruise ship is officially setting off." With Qin Mo's announcement, the people in the control room also sounded the horn to signal the departure. The elderly folks were so excited about the cruise setting sail that they danced around like children. On the first day of the ship's journey out to sea, Qin Mo was worried that the elderly might get seasick, so he had them all take motion sickness pills before going to bed. When he woke up, he realized that this time he was just like an outsider who had never seen the world. It turned out that a luxury cruise of this magnitude sailing on the sea felt completely stable. If it weren't for the fact that Qin Mo could see the blue ocean outside the window, he would have doubted whether he had actually slept on land that night. He had heard that wealthy people in certain regions would choose to take ferries across the ocean to travel, and now he understood why the experience was so pleasant. After a simple wash-up, Chin Mo went outside to find that the elderly had also gotten up. They all gathered in the restaurant on the second floor for breakfast. The cruise, which was a reward from the system, had 5 levels, 3 above the deck and 2 below for cargo and machinery. The 3 levels above the deck included the activity area on the first floor, the restaurant and guest rooms on the second, and the best view on the third floor, which housed the control room and VIP cabins. As the ship's owner, Chin Mo naturally arranged for everyone from Chin Family Village to stay in the VIP cabins. The breakfast was unremarkable, typical of a 5-star hotel's offerings. Chin Mo had brought the elderly to his private island, and this trip was also a test for the ship's various configurations. The breakfast was decent, comparable to what they served in the Chin Family Village canteen, though it lacked variety, even missing meat buns. However, the Hong Kong-style dim sum had its own charm, making for an overall satisfactory meal. The elderly casually commented on the food while the chef team that boarded with them listened in silence. These chefs came from star-rated hotels. Although they couldn't compare to top-tier 5-star chefs, how could they possibly be outdone by a simple village like Chin Family Village? Yet, they didn't dare to argue. Before coming, they had been warned by the travel company's owner that this trial run involved the owner's relatives. They knew not to offend anyone, or else this lucrative business opportunity would slip away. The head chef said, "Let it be. The elderly might just be used to home-cooked meals and are comparing out of habit." Seeing that the elderly were enjoying the food, he figured they were not dissatisfied with their cooking. The other chefs nodded in agreement. After all, how could they argue with the relatives of the boss? Little did they know that the canteen in Chin Family Village was indeed managed by a team of 5-star hotel chefs. With Chin Mo, who had inherited exceptional culinary skills, guiding them, it had become a gastronomic destination in the surrounding villages. Nowadays, many people's first choice for a grand meal was to buy a meal ticket from the Chin Family Village canteen, as the value for money was outstanding. Having been accustomed to 5-star dishes, the elderly could easily tell the difference when presented with this slightly downgraded, less familiar Hong Kong-style breakfast. However, this was just a minor episode. After finishing breakfast, the cruise finally arrived at Chin Mo's private island. Although it was called a private island, it was not uninhabited. Rather, it was a tourist island managed by a small country in Southeast Asia. Due to its poverty and lack of resources and personnel to develop and manage these islands, the country simply sold the islands to wealthy individuals from abroad, similar to how land is sold to developers domestically. Before the system packaged this island for an overseas company under Chin Mo's name, the island was already somewhat famous as a tourist destination in Southeast Asia, with a dock, hotels, and transportation facilities in place. Many local residents also came to the island to run small businesses or work as tour guides. When Chin Mo's cruise docked, nearby tourists and locals looked over curiously. The travel company had already arranged for local transport early in the morning, and a medium-sized bus was waiting on the road at the dock. Chin Mo and the elderly companions were quickly taken to the only 5-star hotel at the site. Just as everyone was preparing to return to their rooms to rest, someone suddenly called out to Chin Mo, "Mr. Chin." 3 locals approached him, their skin darkened by the strong sun on the island, contrasting sharply with the foreign tourists. "You know me?" Chin Mo was surprised. Although he was the owner of the island, he had never been here before and had not informed anyone of his visit. "Hello, Mr. Chin. We learned about your arrival from the visa information." The leader of the locals presented an ID to Chin Mo, revealing that he was actually the police chief of the island, responsible for the island's security. On this privately owned island sold to foreigners, he essentially worked for Chin Mo. If Chin Mo expressed any dissatisfaction, he would promptly be reassigned. This time, he had coincidentally learned about Chin Mo's arrival through the visa information and wanted to come by to familiarize himself. The other 2 locals who accompanied him were businessmen from the island. They had a good relationship with the police chief, and upon hearing that the island's owner had finally arrived, they came along to make an acquaintance, hoping to seize the opportunity to do business on Chin Mo's island. "Is that so, Chief? What can I do for you?" Although Chin Mo's English was initially poor, it had become fluent after receiving comprehensive knowledge from the system, allowing him to converse with the 3 locals without any issues. "Nothing much, just wanted to say hello, Mr. Chin," the 3 replied humbly. Chin Mo understood his unique position as the owner of the island. However, he wouldn't be visiting often. Ultimately, the island would still be managed by these locals, as long as they could generate profit and development for him. While Chin Mo was chatting with the 3, Chin Fengyu had already taken the elderly companions to the hotel to check in. The elderly were unable to contribute to the English conversation, so Chin Fengyu and Zhang Tingting handled it while the others explored the hotel. As the only star-rated hotel on the island, the decor and setting of this hotel are quite exquisite, and many influencers take photos in the courtyard outside. "What is wrong with you, old lady? You've gotten my dress dirty." While the elderly were wandering around, Granny Song Chunmei accidentally bumped into a young influencer returning to the hotel lobby from the front yard. The other party, also a fellow countrywoman, glared at Song Chunmei and began to scold her. Sorry, let me clean it for you. Song Chunmei noticed that a faint footprint had indeed marked the influencer's pristine dress, and she hurriedly took out her handkerchief to wipe it clean. Don't touch my Chanel dress with your dirty towel. The influencer, seeing Song Chunmei's well-used handkerchief, nearly screamed. Chapter 226. Compensation for damages. The influencer's scream quickly attracted the attention of those around. The photography team accompanying her also came over, along with a middle-aged man. As soon as the influencer saw this man, she clung to him and complained, Honey, didn't you say this is the most upscale hotel on the island? How come there's a rural old lady ruining the mood? Look, you got me this Chanel dress and now it's dirty. The man, hearing the influencer's whiny tone, felt his heart soften and quickly reassured her, then turned to look at Song Chunmei with disdain. Get the hotel manager over here. With a command from the man, his assistant quickly ran to find the hotel front desk. Granny Song Chunmei had never seen such a scene and felt a bit flustered. The man found her reaction amusing. The influencer by his side was not his wife, but rather a low-profile young star he had finally managed to date. This was their first trip abroad, and he naturally wanted to shape her image well. For this reason, he had specially hired a photography team to help her with her photos and even promised to invest in a web series for her in the future. With such bravado, he felt it necessary to establish his authority in front of an old lady. The hotel manager was quickly brought over. Clearly recognizing this big client who had booked several suites, the manager approached with a poor grasp of the local language and greeted, Mr. Song. What seems to be the problem? The man with the last name Song sneered, pointing at Song Chunmei. What is going on with your hotel? If you're going for a high-end route, how could you let someone like this trash pick her in? She disturbed my girlfriend and got her dress dirty. This dress costs over 200,000. What are you going to do about it? Over 200,000? Song Chunmei was taken aback. At this moment, other elderly people from Kinjiakan also gathered around. The hot-tempered elder Qin Huai was not one to tolerate such nonsense and remarked, It's a trivial matter. It's just a shoe print. Can't you just wipe it off with your hands? Do you not have hands? Wipe it off with my hands. The influencer raised her voice an octave, nearly screaming. Do you know what kind of dress this is? A handmade Chanel dress, a global limited edition. Do you think it's your old shabby cotton coat? Wipe it off. I looked at it and thought it was not as warm as my cotton coat. How can something like this be considered designer quality? The elderly folks from Qin Family Village looked each other up and down, unable to discern what was so special about the dress. Honey, the female internet celebrity was infuriated and sought help from Boss Song again. Naturally, Boss Song wouldn't let his hard-won lover be upset, so he immediately shouted at the hotel manager, Don't you understand the situation? Hurry up and kick these poor old folks out. The hotel manager, with limited Chinese skills, was confused, prompting Boss Song's assistant to quickly translate for him. The manager finally grasped the situation. In his view, although they were all customers, there was still a hierarchy. Boss Song had booked the most expensive executive suite upon arrival, and the photography team under him was also staying in luxurious rooms, with one person's spending power equivalent to that of dozens. He looked at Qin Huai and the other elderly villagers, who clearly didn't seem wealthy, and figured they must just be looking to book the most basic room, which wouldn't bring in much profit at all. With this thought in mind, the manager made his decision and waved his hand to call the hotel security over to expel the elderly folks. What's the rush to kick us out? We're here to stay too. The elderly folks couldn't take the insult and stood their ground against the security. The female internet celebrity, seeing the advantage was on her side, sneered, Why not? Just because this is a private island, being rich makes you impressive. Who told you to be poor? Exactly. On this private island, wealth makes you king. The local government has sold the property rights outright. It's all about business logic here. Several photographers beside the female internet celebrity echoed in agreement. They had made quite a bit of money from this trip and naturally wanted to please the internet celebrity and her wealthy backer. Just as the elderly folks from Qin Family Village were at a loss for words, Qin Mo had heard the commotion and walked over, coincidentally catching the last two remarks. He casually asked, Oh, so it's about being rich here? Upon seeing Qin Mo approach, the elderly folks felt a sense of relief. Qin Huai quickly said, You're just in time, Xiao Mo. Your seventh grandma accidentally stepped on this person's dress, but it's not a big deal. Yet this group has been jabbering in a foreign language and wants to kick us out. Not a big deal. The female internet celebrity wouldn't let it go. This dress is worth 200,000, you know? Qin Mo had already heard her shouting when he walked over. I'll pay. He couldn't be bothered to argue. 200,000 was nothing to him at this point. He directly pulled out a black card. This was the Supreme card from the provincial city bank that Song Xian had arranged for him, even overseas. It had a limit of $1 million and was accepted globally without issues. The female internet celebrity was taken aback by Qin Mo's words. As an 18-line actress, although she promoted herself as a star, She clearly hadn't encountered someone so wealthy before, leaving her momentarily speechless. Boss Song, eyeing Chin Mo up and down, squinted and said, "Since this young brother is willing to pay, let us let this matter go." Hearing this, the female internet celebrity was immediately dissatisfied and wanted to say something more, but Boss Song quickly soothed her. "Tomorrow I'll get you a designer bag. So just calm down." Upon hearing about the designer bag, the female internet celebrity fell silent. The boss with the surname Song continued to get close to Chin Mo, saying, "I wonder what business you are doing domestically, young brother?" He felt that he had already given Chin Mo enough face, and by getting closer, they might cooperate in the future. After all, a young man who casually spends 200,000 on a dress probably comes from a well-connected family. Chin Mo glanced at him without replying, only coldly saying, "Wait, since I've already paid to buy this dress from you, shouldn't you take it off for me now?" "What?" The female internet celebrity was taken aback, and the middle-aged man named Song's expression also changed. Chin Mo repeated, "I paid for this dress. What do you mean not taking it off for me? Are you trying to scam money and keep the dress?" Under normal circumstances, Chin Mo wouldn't bother arguing with such people. But since this little incident involved someone trying to bully his elderly relatives, he felt he had to stand up for them. Chapter 227. The boss's friend. "You want me to take off the dress?" The female internet celebrity retorted sharply, clearly feeling offended by Chin Mo. The man beside her, Mr. Song, also frowned. He believed he had given Chin Mo enough respect, but Chin Mo was showing him no courtesy at all. "I'm not interested in your body. You can go back to your hotel room to change. After all, I paid for this dress. I think it looks quite clean, and I'm planning to keep it as a rag for my grandmother," Chin Mo said calmly. But to the others, this was pure humiliation. "Honey." The female internet celebrity didn't know how to counter this and turned to her man for help with a playful tone. She really liked the dress and hadn't taken enough photos with it yet. Besides, the small stain could be easily cleaned. She was just making a big deal out of nothing and now found herself in a difficult position. The middle-aged man watched Chin Mo disrespect him and his face hardened. He thought Chin Mo was some rich kid and wanted to befriend him, but since Chin Mo was being rude, he decided not to waste any more words. He waved his hand to summon his assistant, commanding, "Translate this to the hotel manager. Tell him to kick these country bumpkins out, or I'll check out." The assistant hurriedly ran to convey this to the manager, who was taken aback. Mr. Song had booked an executive suite and several high-end rooms for 10 days, which amounted to tens of thousands of dollars, not counting the man's dining expenses. Losing this business could get the manager in trouble with his boss. Not wanting to get into a dispute over who was right or wrong, he directly shouted at the security in the local dialect. The security guards immediately picked up their riot gear and approached, ready to forcibly remove Chin Mo and his group. "Are you planning to be unreasonable?" Chin Mo frowned as he looked at the approaching security guards. The female internet celebrity, seeing that she had the upper hand, stepped forward, pointing at Chin Mo and scolding. "What kind of reason can you talk about with a country bumpkin like you?" As she spoke, the female influencer turned back and playfully said to the middle-aged man, "Honey, just have someone drive them out. A bunch of country bumpkins ruining my mood for taking photos. Act now." The middle-aged man looked proud as he could command these foreigners. This was a symbol of his status and wealth. The security guards, upon hearing the translated instructions, stepped forward to push out everyone from the Chin family village. However, at that moment, the sheriff and two local big shots, who had just been chatting with Chin Mo at the hotel entrance, noticed the commotion inside the hotel and walked in. As one of the bosses entered the hotel lobby, the man named Song's eyes lit up. He knew the hotel owner through an introduction and considered this hotel a familiar place where he could show support. He quickly approached, needing assistance. The hotel manager rushed to follow, fearing that the middle-aged man would complain to his boss. "Mr. Song Jinyu? What is going on?" The owner, like earlier when chatting with Chin Mo, asked in clumsy Mandarin. He was a smart man, aware that the largest tourist market in Southeast Asia comes from the Han people, so he had consistently learned the language. Seeing this owner, Song Jinyu became even more arrogant, saying, "Boss Saf, you came just in time." The security guards panicked even more upon hearing Song Jinyu greet their boss, hurriedly explaining the situation in a flurry of foreign language. Saf's expression changed drastically. He knew that Chin Mo had brought his elderly family members to travel, and it was one thing for Song Jinyu to offend Chin Mo. But his foolish manager dared to have the security drive Chin Mo away? Saf trembled with anger. He had just managed to build some goodwill with Chin Mo, and now it was all ruined. Seeing his boss trembling with rage, the manager panicked and turned to urge the security guards loudly. "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and drive these people out." Before he could finish, Saf had already kicked him out with a swift motion. Though only about 1.6 meters tall, this local businessman unleashed surprising strength, sending the manager rolling several times. Song Jinyu was startled and quickly said, "Boss Saf, there's no need to be so angry. Your manager was actually being accommodating. It's all the fault of those country bumpkins." He thought the local boss was trying to please him by having his staff vent their frustrations. However, as soon as he finished speaking, he was met with Saf's furious glare. "Get this guy out," Saf said first in Mandarin, then repeated in the local language while pointing at the group of security guards. Song Jinyu couldn't believe his ears. His friends back home had a deep relationship with Boss Saf. How could this owner dare to treat him this way? "Boss Saf, is there a misunderstanding?" Song Jinyu quickly asked. "There's no misunderstanding. My hotel does not welcome you," Saf said decisively. The bewildered security guards dared not defy their boss's orders and shifted their focus from the Qin family village crowd to Song Jinyu and his group. The female influencer was startled and quickly hid beside Song Jinyu, who felt embarrassed and, in a fit of anger, shouted, "Saf, how dare you treat me like this? Aren't you afraid that the merchants from my country will unite to boycott you?" Haha. Safu was too lazy to waste words with him. With a wave of his hand, he had the security escort Song Jinyu out, then turned and jogged a few steps to apologize to Qin Mo, saying, "I'm sorry, Mr. Qin. I didn't expect this to happen. I hope it won't affect your mood during this trip." Seeing the local boss's respectful attitude towards Qin Mo, everyone was puzzled. Song Jinyu, who had just been escorted out, and the female internet celebrity looked shocked through the glass door of the hotel. Song Jinyu was well aware of the strength of his business circle friends. Even their reputation couldn't intimidate Safu, but now here was Safu bowing to Qin Mo. Could it be that his companion had indeed provoked someone formidable? Inside the hotel, the staff were also filled with dread. Just moments ago, they had been listening to Song Jinyu's orders to prepare to drive Qin Mo and his group away, but now they saw their boss bowing in apology. If responsibilities were pursued, they could all end up unemployed today. The elderly residents of Qin Family Village looked at Qin Mo in amazement. Who would have thought our little Mo would have such prospects? Now he even has friends abroad. One remarked. Look at that arrogant woman earlier. It's outrageous. She tried to extort us for 200,000 just because I accidentally left a footprint. Luckily, we have little Mo around. Song Chunmei felt a wave of fear. If it had just been the elderly in their group traveling alone, she couldn't imagine how things would have ended. Chapter 228. Complimentary reception. After the hotel owner had Song Jinyu and his group removed, he immediately instructed the hotel manager to clean out the executive suite for Qin Mo's use. "But boss, Mr. Song's belongings are still in the room," the manager replied awkwardly, remembering that the owner had earlier instructed him to treat Song Jinyu well. Now, the situation had left him confused. Go in with the recording and collect his things. Also, don't forget to change the sheets and make sure the room is clean. Moments later, Qin Mo and the elderly residents were respectfully welcomed into the executive suite. This suite had 6 or 7 rooms, enough to accommodate more than 10 people. However, since Qin Mo's group had nearly 20 people, Qin Mo, Qin Fengyu, and Zhang Tingting gave up this suite for the elderly to enjoy. The hotel owner quickly arranged separate luxury rooms for the 3 of them. After dropping off their luggage, the group regrouped in the hotel's executive corridor. Looking at the high-end corridor accessible only to suite guests, the elderly were truly amazed. Not only was there a variety of exquisite food, but there were also spa services and various exercise equipment nearby. Staying here, they could enjoy various amenities without stepping outside. What is this cocktail? Over $100? That's about 1,000 back home. The elderly wandered around the executive corridor, and it was unclear who first boasted about drinking. Soon, the older men, including Qin Huai, found themselves near the bar. In Qin Family Village, they mostly drank homemade liquor, occasionally buying some local spirits. So they had never heard of cocktails. Seeing the menu prices nearly scared them away. Forget it, forget it. The price of this cocktail is enough for us to brew 20 pounds of liquor. Qin Huai and the others shook their heads and prepared to leave. However, at that moment, a nearby waiter hurriedly approached and said in Chinese to Qin Huai and the others, "Gentlemen, our boss has already said that all your expenses will be covered by him, as a treat for Mr. Qin and his family. So if you want to order this drink, just let us know." Saying this, the waiter walked to the bar and placed an order for Qin Huai and the others. After a series of impressive actions by the bartender behind the bar, several colorful cocktails were prepared. Is this what cocktails are? The old men, who had scarcely seen any Western liquor in their lives, were captivated by the quirky drinks in front of them. But they quickly recalled the prices they had seen on the menu. They didn't understand the English written on it, but the Arabic numerals and dollar signs were easy to recognize. 5 small drinks would cost over $100? Qin Huai exclaimed. Although the cocktails were vibrant and enticing, the total volume of these drinks was less than a bowl of liquor back in Kanjiakan. The waiter, acting as a guide, smiled and explained, "No, the price on the menu is 100 per drink, but that is for the basic version. I had the bartender prepare different cocktails for you, which are approximately around 150. Upon hearing this, the old men widened their eyes and quickly reached for the drinks. Wow, one of these drinks is almost 1,000 at home. It really is a case of the quick getting it and the slow missing out. Uncle Fu, Uncle Jianjun, and Third Master stood close together, grabbed a drink, and tilted their heads back to gulp it down. Fourth master and fifth master, who and T managed to grab a drink, were instantly annoyed. Third master Qin Huai was their elder brother, so they dared not act recklessly. But Qin Fugua and Qin Jianjun were their nephews. How dare they snatch drinks from their elders? Fourth master and fifth master reached out and gave the two of them a good knock on the head. You ungrateful descendants, forgetting your elders when you see good wine? Qin Fugua's face turned red. As the village secretary, he had a slightly higher education level and had heard about cocktails from some books. But he had never had the chance to try them in the village. Now, seeing such expensive ones, he couldn't help but snatch one to taste. Qin Jianjun laughed heartily, disregarding fourth and fifth master's anger, and downed the drink in one go. Third master Qin Huai watched the annoyed expressions of fourth and fifth masters and teased, TSK, TSK. This cocktail is really nice, refreshing yet with a strong kick. Why don't you two just pay for yourselves to try it? Pay for what? Qin Wenjuan and Qin Liangping were even more irritated by this teasing. Spending over 1,000 for a drink? Who in their right mind would do that? The waiter, seeing that the group was about to start fighting, was startled and quickly stepped forward, saying, No need to argue, no need to argue. If you like it, I can order a few more drinks for you. We can order more? Is it still free? Qin Huai and the others were taken aback. They thought that the favor from Xiao Mo would only allow them 3 drinks at this hotel, but now it sounded like they could drink freely? Isn't this really free for us? Qin Guofu asked seriously. What if there's a misunderstanding due to a language barrier, and the bill comes to tens of thousands? It was understandable for Qin Guofu to be anxious. A drink could cost 1,000. With the amount these village drinkers could consume, even getting mildly tipsy would easily run into several tens of thousands. Of course, you don't have to worry about the costs. Our boss has made it very clear that all expenses will be covered by the hotel, the waiter replied with a polite smile, though he was internally cautious. He had asked the boss a similar question earlier to confirm if there were any limits on the complimentary hospitality, as it was quite common to spend 2 or 3 tens of thousands on entertaining a client. However, the boss had clearly told him there were no restrictions. You just need to meet all their requests, and remember one thing. Everyone on this island must heed Mr. Qin's wishes. Reflecting on this, the waiter was still puzzled. Why did everyone on the island have to cater to Qin Mo? Even the boss had sent a wealthy client, Song Jinyu, out of the hotel just to please him. What exactly was Qin Mo's status? The more the waiter thought about it, the more fearful he became, so he decided not to dwell on it. His task was simply to ensure that Qin Mo and his group were well entertained, focusing on guiding them and handling the bills at the hotel. Once Qin Guofu confirmed that the drinks were indeed free, he didn't rush to drink, but quickly went to bring over the group of ladies, including his 2nd and 7th grandmothers. Free drinks? Is this for real? Am I going to deceive these ladies? He understood that the other party was trying to please Qin Mo and was intentionally giving them face. Qin Guofu was not foolish and naturally grasped their intent. The elderly ladies felt similarly and remarked, I was suspicious when Qin Mo said that a foreign company was taking us on a trip. I thought he was footing the bill himself. Turns out, Qin Mo really does have someone treating him wherever he goes. They were all excited and ready to enjoy the free drinks. Qin Family Village was in the mountains, and it was especially cold in winter. Nearly everyone indulged in alcohol. When Qin Mo, Qin Fengyu, and Zhang Tingting returned to the executive suite, the elderly were already quite drunk, sprawled across the sofas in the lobby. The attendants escorting the elderly back to their rooms felt awkward upon seeing Qin Mo. The lead waiter explained, I'm sorry, Mr. Qin. I tried to advise the elders to drink in moderation, but they seemed to be quite happy and wouldn't listen. As the waiter recounted the situation, Qin Mo and Qin Fengyu couldn't help but laugh. Being from Qin Family Village, they knew their customs well. Mountain folk were known for their hearty drinking. Moreover, the elderly had no concept of foreign wines or cocktails. These sweeter drinks went down easily, and it was likely they had overindulged in their merriment. Mo. Is this going to be a problem? Zhang Tingting, who had come back to the village with Qin Fengyu, was worried about the elderly's drinking capacity and feared there might be complications. Qin Mo and Qin Fengyu exchanged smiles, not particularly concerned about the issue. With the drinking capacity of the elderly, a table of them could easily finish a whole jar of aged liquor during the New Year celebrations. Now, it's mostly because they're not used to these cocktails made with foreign spirits that they get drunk. It's really a case of others spending money while they risk their health. Qin Mo looked at the group of elderly people sprawled out drunkenly and couldn't help but find them somewhat endearing. The two uncles, Qin Huai and Qin Liangping, even while half drunk, didn't forget to banter, mumbling about wanting another drink. We should carry them back to their respective rooms. Just in case. Let us all stay to take care of them tonight, Qin Mo instructed. The hotel staff quickly came over to help each elderly person back to their rooms for some rest. By the time Qin Mo assisted the third uncle, Qin Huai, and the fourth uncle, Qin Wenjuan, to a double room and laid them down, he himself was sweating and had to sit in a chair to rest for a while. At that moment, a drowsy Qin Huai suddenly started talking in his sleep. Come on, little fourth, What's wrong? Can't drink anymore? To Qin Wenjuan, who was sleeping in the next bed, it seemed like he could actually respond. Then why are you hiding? Come over and keep drinking. Qin Huai insisted. Qin Mo, sitting nearby, glanced back and forth, surprised that the two elderly men, with their eyes barely open from drunkenness, could still bicker. Qin Wenjuan, unwilling to admit defeat, retorted. That's because I'm not used to these cocktails. The first few glasses were a bit novel, but honestly, I still prefer our village's special rice wine. I wonder if we can go back and have a glass before the new year. Little Fourth, you better shut up, or you'll just add pressure on Little Mo. Qin Huai shouted. Qin Wenjuan, slightly sobered up by the yell, lowered his voice and continued. Well, in the end, it's just that we old folks are not useful. We can't handle even a little noise and end up bothering the young ones. Just be aware of that. Little Mo specifically arranged for us to come out and have fun, so why are you complaining? Qin Huai scolded. Qin Wenjuan immediately felt guilty, his tone softening. I was just saying the cocktails aren't as good as our rice wine. When Qin Huai heard this, he scolded again. There are many things outside that are worse than what we have in the village. Take the ocean, for example. At first glance, it's a bit fascinating. But after a while, everyone gets bored. But what can we do? Little Mo took us out for a vacation to make these 2 months comfortable for us. And your complaining is just putting pressure on him. I know. You're only a few months older than me. You've been lecturing me for decades. Qin Wenjuan grumbled, not wanting to argue further with Qin Huai, and soon fell into a deep sleep. Watching the two elderly men fall into a stable sleep, Qin Mo finally got up and stepped outside. Qin Fengyu and Zhang Tingting were still in the lobby. Qin Mo glanced at them and said, You two should go back and sleep. I'll keep watch tonight. I don't see any issues with the elderly. After they left, Qin Mo lay down on the sofa in the living room, looking up at the exquisite ceiling while reflecting on what the third and fourth uncles had said. Indeed, for the elderly, no matter how good the outside world is, it's merely a new experience to open their eyes. For them, life in Qin Family Village is solid and dependable, as everything related to food, drink, housing, and transportation is familiar to them. Previously, Qin Mo had somewhat taken it for granted, thinking that cruising on a luxurious ship and expanding the horizons of the elderly would surely make everyone happy for a month or two. It was only after hearing the words of the elders today that he realized that while he was comforting the elderly, they were, in fact, also comforting him. The elderly were just putting on a cooperative facade to allow Qin Mo to focus on the completion of the project. Of course, the itinerary was well arranged. But the elderly preferred stillness over movement. After seeing the ocean, they were eager to return home. However, there was nothing to be done about it. Qin Mo sighed. For Qin Family Village to develop, infrastructure was essential. Without houses, where would the returning people live? Not to mention how to accommodate the increasing number of children in the future. After much contemplation, Qin Mo decided not to cancel the trip. But he could no longer accompany the elderly. He needed to return to oversee the construction at Qin Family Village and try to shorten the project timeline. The next morning, after the elderly had recovered from their hangover and freshened up, when they gathered at the hotel restaurant, Qin Fengyu and Zhang Tingting informed them that Qin Mo had already left. Brother Mo said he had to return to the construction site in Qin Family Village to handle some matters. The rest of the trip will be led by me and Zhang Tingting. Something at the construction site? That must be important. The elderly asked if they should also go help, suggesting that they could just have fun with the travel group without taking up the young people's time. They were worried that Qin Mo would be short-handed dealing with things alone. Qin Fengyu chuckled, Grandpa and Grandma, don't you know my abilities? I could help out at the factory, but I would just be in the way at the construction site if there was something urgent. Upon hearing this, the elderly could only nod in agreement. That's true, but Fengyu, even though you may not be as clever as Xiao Mo, you are an adult now. Your second grandma is right. We may not be as sharp as Xiao Mo, but we must keep our bodies active. Look at you, you're in your 20s. Why haven't you thought about marriage yet? The elderly suddenly changed the subject, leaving Qin Fengyu feeling overwhelmed. He realized that his humble remark had led them to genuinely consider pairing him off for Qin Family Village. Chapter 230. Returning to the village after leaving the private island. Qin Mo arrived at the capital of the country and then took a flight directly back to the provincial city. He didn't rush back to Qin Family Village but, out of curiosity, joined a one-day tour group for Qin Family Village online. Since the first batch of tourists visited the garden area of Qin Family Village, other attractions had also gained popularity through their online reviews. The unique snack street, endless wheat fields, opera troupe, and vintage film crew created a distinctive scene that attracted city workers. Now, every weekend, there are special tourist buses heading to Qin Family Village from the provincial city and Danyang City. Some are day trips, going in the morning and returning in the evening, while others are weekend tours lasting 2 days and 1 night. Qin Mo naturally didn't need to return, so he signed up for a day tour, which was a way to hitch a ride home. As soon as Qin Mo got on the bus, a female university student with a ponytail sat next to him. The girl was youthful and beautiful, and as soon as she boarded, she had already attracted a lot of attention from the male passengers. Now sitting next to Chin Mo, she also drew a wave of envious glances his way. A man dressed in brand-name clothing, holding a camera, leaned over. He completely ignored Chin Mo and said to the female student, "Hey, are you going to Qingjia Village alone?" "Me too. I just happen to need a model for some photos. Are you interested in teaming up with me?" Chin Mo felt a bit embarrassed for the man. Although he was dressed in sportswear, his age was evident. He was at least in his 30s, yet he was calling a young girl miss. However, Chin Mo didn't intend to say anything, as the girl was indeed youthful and attractive, and it wasn't a big deal for someone to pursue her. The female student glanced at the man, smiled politely, and then put on her headphones, choosing not to respond. The man's smile froze instantly, but he was thick-skinned. After hesitating, he turned to Chin Mo and said, "Bro, how about you switch seats?" Chin Mo was indifferent and was about to get up, but the girl subtly pulled him back, clearly not wanting to be bothered by the man. This left Chin Mo in an awkward position, so he casually made up, "We're classmates, going to Qingjia Village together." "Classmates?" The man's brows furrowed as he scrutinized Chin Mo, comparing him to the female student, his face full of disbelief. "Bro, whether you're classmates or not, I advise you to stop dreaming about something unrealistic." The man began to insult Chin Mo, pointing at his clothes and saying, "What you're wearing isn't even worth the lens of my camera. You look so rustic. You must be from some rural area." Chin Mo used to return to his village every year during the busy farming season, which had tanned his skin under the sun. Compared to students who grew up in the city, the difference was quite obvious, so the man was adamant that Chin Mo couldn't possibly be the female student's classmate. Initially, Chin Mo just wanted to help the girl deal with the man, but upon hearing those words, he felt a surge of anger. What is wrong with being from the countryside? Are rural people eating your rice? Oh, wait, it's you eating the rice of rural people, right? And hey, don't you look in the mirror? You're in your 30s, yet you're calling someone miss. Does your wife know about this? Chin Mo was not one to be pushed around and fired back. The female student next to him widened her eyes in surprise at Chin Mo's outburst, seemingly not expecting him to have such a fiery side. When she heard the latter part of his response, she couldn't help but chuckle. Indeed, she had felt that the cameraman was too greasy, which was why she had pulled Chin Mo back to avoid switching seats. At that moment, everyone on the bus turned to see the commotion and noticed Chin Mo and the female student chatting happily, clearly understanding her intention. The man, surrounded by curious onlookers, felt embarrassed and returned to his seat. After such an episode, the female college student became more curious about Chin Mo. Once the crowd's attention shifted, she asked, "Are you really a student at our school?" "Definitely not. I'm well past the graduation age, just made that up. I'm actually from a rural area," Chin Mo explained. The girl wasn't foolish and quickly snapped back to reality, excitedly saying, "Could it be that you're from Chin Family Village?" Chin Mo nodded but found her reaction a bit strange. "I am indeed from Chin Family Village, but it's not exactly a hot topic worth such excitement." The girl playfully stuck out her tongue and continued to explain with enthusiasm. "You have no idea. Recently, Song Yitong went to Chin Family Village, and now it's the hottest tourist spot around here." "What?" Chin Mo had heard of Song Yitong. She was a well-known celebrity with several television works. "Really? You're from Chin Family Village and you didn't know about this?" The female student seemed a bit skeptical and pulled out her phone to show him the news. It featured a standard 9-square grid of photos posted by Song Yitong, all taken at famous spots in Chin Family Village. The quality was exceptional, capturing not only the beauty of Song Yitong, but also the unique scenery of the village. After a glance, Chin Mo realized this was likely no coincidence. "All right, big brother. Looks like you're secretly using online popularity to your advantage." Chin Mo had taken the elderly couple out for a trip, leaving all matters in Chin Family Village to his second brother, Chin Tianrui, the village manager. The recent surge in popularity for Chin Family Village was probably orchestrated by Chin Tianrui. "With my brother around, it won't be long before I can just sit back and relax," Chin Mo thought happily. The female student, noticing Chin Mo's cheerful demeanor, curiously asked, "Why are you so happy? Are you really from Chin Family Village? How come you didn't know about such a big event?" Chin Mo smiled and replied, "Isn't it surprising? I didn't know, and suddenly seeing the village become so popular is quite a delight." About 2 hours later, the bus Chin Mo was on arrived at Chin Family Village. The road that had just been completed this year meant he no longer needed to negotiate with the county government. It was already included in the municipal plan connecting to the city South Ring Road. After integrating into the highway system, it only took 2 to 3 hours to drive to Chin Family Village from the provincial capital or nearby cities. Upon arriving at Chin Family Village, as soon as Chin Mo got off the bus and hadn't walked far, the female college student followed him. "Hey, local villager. I forgot to ask your name earlier because you fell asleep on the bus," she said, a hint of dissatisfaction in her voice. After all, she considered herself a campus beauty. Usually, boys would try to get close to her, but Chin Mo had just slept next to her. Hearing her, Chin Imo turned around and replied, "My name is Chin Imo." His indifferent tone didn't seem to satisfy the female student. However, she didn't hesitate and continued. "My name is Lu Xian. Since you are a villager from Qin Village, could you take me around?" "Me? Isn't there a tour guide for this travel group?" Chin Imo came back this time specifically for a tour group, besides just getting a ride straight to the destination. He also wanted to follow the tourist route to see if there were any shortcomings in his own Qin village. This time, he left the elderly folks abroad and came back to check for any gaps. He planned to complete any major projects all at once to avoid having the elderly go out to escape the noise and pollution later. Although the development of Qin Village benefits the whole village, it is primarily the home of the elderly. How could they be made to feel they had no place to return to? The girl, unaware of Qin Mo's thoughts, excitedly said. "I saw some comments online from earlier visitors. They mentioned that there are several places in Qin Village that are only for villagers, like the activity center." Lu Xian indeed did her homework. Chin Imo noticed that she had a sports camera hanging around her neck. "Are you an online influencer?" Chin Imo asked. Lu Xian's face flushed at this. Her voice lowered slightly as she shyly replied, "I do want to develop in that direction. So I usually record some things to post online. But I only have a few hundred followers." Lu Xian was beautiful and naturally had dreams of being a star. However, saying this in front of a stranger like Chin Imo made her a bit shy. Chin Imo took a moment to reassess Lu Xian. Nowadays, Qin Village had become a well-known internet celebrity village, but it didn't have its own promotional strategy. Chin Imo knew that currently, there wasn't much of a problem since Qin Village wasn't very famous and had few competitors. However, in the future, Qin Village might become the most popular tourist destination near the provincial capital. At that time, the nearby resorts that were already built would surely be dissatisfied if their visitors were taken away. In today's internet age, the best way to attack a tourist spot is to spread rumors online. Chin Imo didn't have any corresponding measures in place and might be caught off guard, leading to chaos. Whether tourists came or not didn't matter much to Chin Imo. But if the elderly saw those news reports, it might raise their blood pressure. He had overlooked this matter. Chin Imo muttered to himself. Lu Xian was puzzled by Chin Mo's seemingly disconnected remarks. However, before she could respond, Chin Imo said, "Actually, I haven't been back for a long time. The village has changed a lot, and I'm not familiar with it anymore, which is why I joined the tour group." Chin Imo casually made up a reason. "Oh," Lu Xian said, slightly disappointed, but didn't say much more. The greasy man who had been dismissed by Chin Imo earlier happened to overhear their conversation. Seeing this as a good opportunity, he approached them. "Beautiful lady, do you want to check out that activity center?" Lu Xian frowned upon seeing him and replied, "Right, but isn't that place not welcoming to tourists?" "What do you mean by welcoming or not?" The man in the designer suit smiled and fiddled with his expensive camera again. Many attractions here proudly stated that entry and photography were not allowed, but he had captured everything with his camera. Ultimately, it all boiled down to finding connections and paying for favors. The man was quite pleased with himself. He continued, "You must know the brand Qin Family Village Chicken, right?" "Of course," Lu Xian replied, nodding, somewhat convinced by his confidence. "I know a manager from the brand department of Qin Family Village. He holds a significant position there. If I call him to guide us, you don't even need to say you want to visit that activity center. It would be easy even if you wanted to stay there." "Really?" Lu Xian's eyes lit up. There were already many videos online showcasing visits to Qin Family Village. She wanted to gain some traffic, so she naturally needed something appealing. If she could film some restricted areas that outsiders couldn't access, that would be perfect. "Oh, you're interested too?" Chin Imo, who was nearby, also became somewhat intrigued. The man in the designer's suit, Wang Rui, cast a disdainful glance at Chin Imo. He had lost face because of Chin Mo's earlier disruption, and now he saw an opportunity to regain it. "If you call me Brother Rui, I might just take you in." "Haha, little Rui, right? If you really can get in, I'll definitely call you brother. But if you can't get in, then what will you say?" Chin Imo smiled. He was curious to see who in the Qin Family Village enterprise would dare to disturb the activity center reserved for the elderly. Wang Rui had no idea about Chin Mo's identity. He thought Chin Imo was just trying to make small talk and laughed. "What a joke. If I can't get in, I'll call you dad." "All right," Chin Imo said, waiting to see the show unfold. Wang Rui indeed knew someone from the brand department of Qin Family Village. He made a phone call, and the other party seemed to owe him a favor and reluctantly agreed to think of a way. "All set, but my friend is quite busy and needs some time. Let us first follow the tour group around," Wang Rui said loudly. Casting a provocative glance at Chin Imo ignored him and followed the tour group. Taking a stroll around Qin Family Village, the gardens, with their vast green fields cultivated by machinery, amazed the city dwellers. The rural-style drama troupes and vintage film teams were particularly refreshing for them. Chin Imo, however, was not surprised. Following the tourist route, he was more interested in identifying any shortcomings in Qin Family Village. From a visitor's perspective, he indeed noticed several issues. For example, the accommodation situation. Although Qin Family Village had a road directly connecting to the city, allowing for day trips, many tourists still wanted to stay for a day to enjoy a leisurely and in-depth experience. Hotels were not very suitable, but some of the old vacant houses could be transformed into distinctive guest houses. The division between the villagers' living areas and the tourist routes was not very clear. While the elderly had no issues traveling outside, living in the village would certainly disturb them. Qin Mo didn't lack money. Showcasing the beautiful side of Qin Family Village was more about giving the elderly a sense of pride. If these tourists disturbed the lives of the elderly, that would be completely counterproductive. Qin Mo noted several areas for improvement. At this moment, Wang Rui's acquaintance from the brand department finally arrived. Chapter 232 Qin Family Village video account. Wang Rui had been waiting for this opportunity to show off and quickly approached his arriving friend. Old Su, you finally made it. Is everything settled? As he spoke, Wang Rui shot a glance at the attractive Lu Xian nearby. His friend immediately understood and couldn't help but whisper, "You brat. Why did you come to our Qin Family Village to chase girls? You know this job pays well. If you cause me to lose my job, you'll owe me $1 million. Really? Didn't you say your performance in the brand department was great?" Wang Rui and Old Su stepped aside to talk quietly. "No matter how good the performance is, it doesn't matter. You don't know our boss. He doesn't care about money, as long as it affects the elderly in the village. That's a problem." Wang Rui listened to his friend's words, feeling confused. Is there really a boss these days who doesn't care about making money? I'm telling you, you wouldn't understand. If it weren't for the elderly being out traveling, I wouldn't dare take you to that activity center. Haha, if you can get in, that's fine. Wang Rui thought his friend was just making small talk, pretending it was difficult to help him out so he would remember this favor. He didn't mind as long as he could get in and save face. Wang Rui turned back and called out to Lu Xian, "It's settled. We can take you into that activity center soon." Upon hearing this, Lu Xian's face lit up with joy as she quickly checked her phone battery to prepare for shooting a video to gain some traction. Seeing Lu Xian's beaming smile, Wang Rui felt quite pleased with himself. He then looked towards Qin Mo, who had taken a few steps away, and approached him, saying, "So, the facts are clear. We can soon enter that so-called activity center. Are you going to call me Brother Rui now, or wait until we're inside?" Wang Rui's smug expression finally had the chance to be released after being ridiculed by Qin Mo earlier. "Really?" Qin Mo smiled and turned around. Wang Rui didn't understand the source of Qin Mo's smile, but the manager Su beside him suddenly changed his expression. He widened his eyes in shock and cautiously asked, "Why you're back?" Everyone in the Qin Family Village knew that the chairman had taken the elderly out for a trip. Qin Mo had returned secretly without notifying anyone. And even if he had, it wouldn't be something a mere small manager from the brand department would know. Qin Mo had never even met this employee. After all, most of the time, he acted as a hands-off manager. Only the top supervisors from various departments had a few chances to see him, while other employees rarely had the opportunity to meet him. This manager Su had seen Qin Mo from a distance, but Qin Mo did not recognize him. Wang Rui was also stunned by his friend's reaction. "What is going on? Isn't this guy just an ordinary villager from Qin Family Village? I just rode the tour bus here with him." "Ordinary villager? He is our chairman," Manager Su exclaimed in disbelief. "What?" Wang Rui listened to his friend's words, his eyes widening in disbelief. He turned around to take another look at Qin Mo, but no matter how he viewed him, Qin Mo appeared to be just an ordinary young man, dressed casually in plain sportswear. How could someone like this be the chairman of a brand from Qin Family Village? Wang Rui couldn't believe his ears. Beside him, Lu Xian's gaze towards Qin Mo also changed. Qin Mo was only a few years older than her, looking just like a senior from her school. Who would imagine that a peer could be the chairman of a company? Moreover, Qin Family Village wasn't some ancestral business. Lu Xian, who was studying business, had heard her teachers use the Qin Family Village brand as a case study to explain cost advantages. She knew that Qin Family Village, relying on its supply chain's cost benefits, had managed to push a listed group into retreat after retreat. The strategy and vision behind that came from someone her age? Qin Mo paid no attention to the astonished looks from the two. He turned to one of his employees. "Are you from the branding department?" Qin Mo asked. Yes. I'm Su Guangyi, working under Manager Chun, responsible for liaising with advertisers," Su Guangyi replied with a smile, hoping that being remembered by someone as important as Qin Mo might lead to a promotion. With the Qin Family Village brand currently dominating the market, their biggest competitor had already been defeated, leaving a vast blue ocean market to explore. Although Su Guangyi was just a small manager in the branding department, advertisers were eager to curry favor with him. His salary aside, the commissions he could earn were substantial. Everyone knew that Qin Family Village was bound to grow stronger, and the future advertising expenses would yield frightening growth rates. "Su Guangyi, right?" Qin Mo repeated the name and continued. "I want to see your reflection report before the end of the workday today. Make sure it's shared with all employees in the company for learning. You should know what the main focus of the reflection should be." "I understand," The focus is that employees should not disturb the villagers' normal lives. Su Guangyi quickly nodded, cold sweat breaking out on his back, fearing that Qin Mo might directly fire him. That's good to hear. The Qin Family Village brand belongs to Qin Family Village. Priorities must be clear. Su Guangyi nodded again. He no longer cared about Wang Rui, his troublesome friend, and hurried back to the office to prepare the reflection report. Now it was Qin Mo's turn to look back at Wang Rui. Are you planning to call me dad now? Or do you want to stew in your feelings a bit longer? Wang Rui's face turned pale instantly, and Lu Xian couldn't help but chuckle. Wang Rui had no face left to stay and quickly turned to leave. Qin Mo didn't bother to argue further, but Lu Xian thought for a moment and walked over. Chairman Qin, can you take me around? I promise to capture only the positive image of Qin Family Village. Lu Xian didn't want to miss this great opportunity to meet Qin Mo nowadays. The hottest tourist spot in the provincial capital was Qin Family Village, and if she could shoot exclusive footage, it would surely draw a significant crowd. As someone who wants to create self-media videos, after consolidating the first wave of followers, it will be much easier for Lu Xian to develop in the future. Qin Mo thought for a moment and didn't rush to refuse. After all, the activity center is not a place with strict defenses, and there is nothing scandalous. However, for the video promotion, a comprehensive plan is needed. Qin Mo felt that it was necessary to supplement a video account for Qin Village for promotion, but there was no rush. Perhaps there would be opportunities. You could go to the office building and leave a contact number with the front desk, he casually mentioned. And a smile blossomed on Lu Xian's face again. Chapter 233. Dumplings on the way out, noodles on the way back after sending Lu Xian off. Qin Mo returned to the office building. When the executives heard that the chairman had suddenly returned, they were all shocked. When they learned that Qin Mo was going to hold a meeting, they became even more nervous and hurriedly organized their work. Soon, someone spread the news that Su Guangyi was secretly trying to bring friends into the activity center. Was this meeting going to emphasize discipline? That guy Su Guangyi is too foolish. Who doesn't know that the boss's Achilles heel is the local villagers? Everyone speculated anxiously. Before long, Qin Mo walked into the conference room, and Qin Tianrui was also present, looking nervously at Qin Mo. Second brother, well done. Qin Village has become a popular village. Qin Mo's first sentence was a firm compliment. Qin Tianrui breathed a sigh of relief, fearing that he had caused trouble and that Qin Mo had specially come back to clean up after him. So why did you suddenly come back? After relaxing, Qin Tianrui finally asked. Qin Mo had nothing to hide from his second brother. The elders miss home, and we need to speed up our project progress. Moreover, if there are any gaps that need to be filled, we should complete them as soon as possible to avoid disturbing the elders later. For young people, traveling abroad is a lot of fun, but for the elderly, once the novelty wears off, staying at home is indeed much more stable. The renovation of Qin Village is similar. Qin Mo realized he might be overdoing it. If Qin Village truly becomes like a provincial city, would it still be Qin Village? The countryside should retain the familiar appearance for the elders. Qin Village needs to establish a protected area. High-rise buildings cannot obstruct the view of the small villas. The areas accessible to tourists should have clear restrictions. The production of factories, noise, and wastewater must be well managed. Lush green mountains and clear waters are what the countryside should look like. What Qin Mo wants to do is transform Qin Village into a modern rural area, not a city made of steel and concrete. Under Qin Mo's guidance, new regulations were recorded. After the meeting, Qin Mo called in Song Qingfeng and asked him to increase the number of teams to expedite the foundation work for various projects. As long as the foundation was done well, future construction noise could be kept within a controllable range. 2 weeks passed in the blink of an eye. Under Qin Mo's direct supervision, Song Qingfeng used all his skills to increase the efficiency of the construction site, managing to complete the foundations for both the garden complex and the shopping center within 2 weeks. Those heavy machinery could finally be brought to Qin Village. It has been a long time since there was such a peaceful morning. Qin Mo woke up feeling refreshed. Thinking about the elderly people who used to be awakened by the noise of construction, he felt a bit guilty. However, today was the day they returned home. So, early in the morning, Qin Mo dragged Qin Tianrui to the village dining hall. Qin Mo, you hired so many star chefs for this dining hall. Do you really need to get up early to make a pot of noodles yourself? Qin Tianrui complained, still groggy from being called up at 6 in the morning. Back when we were in school, every holiday we returned home, we were treated to dumplings and noodles. Now that the elderly have a rare chance to go out, they should experience the feeling of being welcomed back home. As Qin Mo spoke, Qin Tianrui's sleepiness faded away, and he felt a warm nostalgia for their youth. Like Qin Mo, he had lost his parents early on and was one of the left-behind children in the village. They grew up sharing meals in various relatives' homes. Later, when they went to the county to study, there was always a bowl of noodles waiting for them during each holiday, with the elderly watching them eat and listening to their stories from school. The elderly, who had barely received any education, didn't know what school was like. Yet they patiently listened to every excited introduction. even if they didn't understand. Back then, Qin Mo and Tianrui didn't comprehend it. But now they realized the weight of the gratitude for being raised. Well, it's our turn now, Qin Tianrui said, rolling up his sleeves. The traditional method of making noodles in the village was by hand. This truly posed a challenge for both Qin Mo and Qin Tianrui. Fortunately, there was a real 5-star chef in the dining hall. When he arrived early to prepare breakfast and saw the two looking troubled, he burst into laughter. Haha, I'm familiar with hand-pulled noodles, let me handle it. Helping the boss alleviate worries was part of his high salary. Qin Mo shook his head and explained the situation. Upon hearing this, the chef's expression changed. In this day and age, who still personally made noodles for the elderly? Being patient enough to share a bowl of noodles with them was already commendable. In the age of smartphones, even during the new year, most people were glued to their phones and reluctant to chat with the elderly. It wasn't entirely the young people's fault. The generational gap was a reality. And many topics simply didn't connect. However, Qin Mo and Qin Tianrui understood that when they studied in the county, the new things they encountered were foreign to the elderly, yet they were willing to listen quietly. This was the purest form of companionship, not seeking deep conversations, but simply being patient enough to listen. Don't worry, boss. I'll teach you how to make this bowl of noodles. If the elderly aren't satisfied, I'll take down my chef's sign, the chef said confidently. With a skilled guide, Qin Mo naturally wouldn't refuse. The kitchen was well-equipped, and soon, Qin Mo and Qin Tianrui began to work together. Handmade noodles require alkaline water to enhance elasticity and salt to improve gluten strength. Salt helps make the noodles thin without breaking, while alkaline water adds a chewy texture. A 5-star chef guided Qin Mo in kneading the dough, while Qin Tianrui was busy preparing a large pot of broth. Although there were only a few elderly people in Qin family village, the two novices took until almost noon to get the noodles and broth ready. At that moment, a bus arrived outside the cafeteria. It was Qin Fengyu and Zhang Tingting returning with the elderly from the airport. They had already arranged for the bus to stop outside the cafeteria, and the elderly got off and walked straight in. Are those two preparing noodles for us? Someone joked. Haha, those two lazy boys didn't even want to learn how to roll dough when they were kids. Third brother, they may be inexperienced, but they have the heart. You have to eat whatever they make, whether it's good or bad, another replied. No way. If it's really not good, I'll have to show them how it's done. My noodles used to be quite famous around here. Qin Wuya, Qin Liangping, laughed heartily. The cheerful voices of the elderly filled the air as they entered. Qin Mo and Qin Tianrui exchanged glances and began to put the noodles into boiling water. They had practiced several times and knew that the noodles needed to be cooked just before serving for the best flavor. At this moment, they worked together, with Qin Mo responsible for putting the noodles in and Qin Tianrui pouring the broth over the scallions. Bowls of simple scallion handmade noodles, carrying the unique aroma of sesame oil, were served at the table. How does it look? Pretty good, right? Qin Mo and Qin Tianrui approached after finishing the noodles. Qin Liangping, who had intended to show off his skills, widened his eyes in surprise. You two really know how to make handmade noodles? Qin Huai, the third elder, was also astonished. Grandma Qi immediately picked up her chopsticks and took a bite. With that first mouthful, she was overjoyed, exclaiming her approval. Seeing her delight, others quickly joined in with their chopsticks. Though simple, these handmade noodles were full of strength with a rich broth, complemented by the warmth of the dish, making it truly exceptional. This was the essence of returning home to a warm bowl of noodles after a long journey. After the elderly had their fill and were satisfied, Qin Liangping snapped back to reality and pointed at Qin Mo, saying, You brat, you must have cheated. These noodles are better than mine. It's definitely the 5-star chef who helped you. The chef, who had been watching from the side, stepped forward and said, Actually, you guessed wrong this time. It took the boss almost 3 hours to prepare this meal. What? Qin Liangping had just been joking, but upon hearing that Qin Mo had worked for 3 hours, he instantly felt regret. The 3rd and 7th grandmas were especially concerned. Oh dear, why didn't you let the kitchen do it? Exactly, Xiao Mo. Take more time to rest. There are a lot of things to do in the village now, don't wear yourself out. The grandma's caring words reached him. And Qin Mo smiled. Making noodles isn't that tiring. It's really exhausting for you elders to run around everywhere. In the past 2 weeks, I've already completed the foundation for the large project in the village. From now on, there won't be any more labor-intensive tasks. If everyone wants to stay in the village, they can, and when they have the energy, they can go out and have fun. As soon as these words came out, both Qin Huai and Qin Guofu's faces turned red. This sounded familiar. Wasn't it exactly what they had complained about while drinking at a hotel on a small island overseas? It turned out that Qin Mo had overheard them. No wonder he suddenly rushed back to the village in the middle of his trip. Qin Guofu proactively said, Little Mo, we were just venting. The village needs progress, and that naturally requires projects, which is unavoidable. Grandma San and the others, unaware of the context, quickly guessed the situation upon hearing Qin Guofu's words. Guofu, my child, everything Qin Imo does is for the good of Qin family village. He just wanted you to enjoy your trip and avoid the noise. Why are you complaining? Grandma Yue, I'm not complaining. I just told third grandpa that we are older and lack the energy, so even if this is a trip, it can be a bit tiring. Isn't that complaining? You talk too much, 7 grandma chimed in. Although Qin Guofu was the village secretary in front of the elders, he was still considered one of the younger generation. The 5th grandpa, Qin Liangping, who had complained with him that day, didn't dare to provoke the elders' anger and pretended not to know anything, leaving only Qin Guofu to bear the brunt of the elders' energy. Qin Imo watched from the side and couldn't help but laugh. Haha, grandmas. Don't make it hard for Uncle Guofu. We're all from Qin family village, who says we can't express our grievances. It's my oversight. I'm back to remedy the situation. In the future, if anyone feels something is off or uncomfortable, feel free to speak up. My true motivation for transforming Qin family village is to provide everyone with better options. At this point, Qin Guofu truly felt ashamed, while Grandma 7 and others laughed. Guofu, you're not as good as little Mo exactly. We're all family. If something's not right, just say it. If you say you're tired from playing, would little M not let you go home? These minor grievances, once expressed, actually don't amount to much. Qin Guofu also laughed heartily. This is my fault. I'll punish myself with 3 bowls. He picked up the noodle soup as if it were a penalty drink and gulped it down. Everyone burst into laughter, and no one brought up the matter again. The chef watching this scene felt a wave of envy. How many complicated relationships in the village arise simply because people can't communicate? Living together day and night, how can there be no conflicts? Small matters accumulate over time. If today you step on my vegetables and I don't mention it, next time I see your fruits, I might just pick a couple. Clearly, they're trivial matters. But resentment builds up slowly. Once a flashpoint occurs, people start counting past grievances, and in the end, they become estranged. If every household had a young person like this, willing to swallow their pride and actively help others save face, that would be wonderful, the chef sighed. After finishing the noodles at home, Qin Imo took the elderly for a walk in the village to help with digestion. Over the past 2 weeks, Qin Imo has indeed accomplished quite a bit. Has the foundation for the hotel been laid? The planning for the garden community has also been completed, and our village is about to have high-rise buildings over 20 stories tall. Can those young folks, like Chun Hua, also come back to live here? In the past, conditions in Qin family village were too poor, and many young people had to move to the county town in search of a better life. The elderly, accustomed to rural life, were reluctant to leave. Many families became scattered this way, without a good living environment and job opportunities. It's hard to blame the young people. Who doesn't want a better life? Many actually have a longing for their hometown, but only a few, like Qin Imo, have the ability to transform it. Who doesn't dream of returning home in glory? More often, people are left with a sense of bitterness, struggling to get by with menial jobs far from home. In the future, when people from Qin family village return to buy houses, there will surely be significant discounts. Qin Imo has converted the homestead in Qin family village into residential properties, and logically, the profits should benefit the villagers. Really? Which elderly person wouldn't want the best for their children? Previously, conditions didn't allow them to hinder their children from developing elsewhere. But now that Qin family village is undergoing a transformation, with improvements in living and working conditions, it's not even far off compared to the county town or Donyang City. Soon, people will want to call their children to see if they can find a job at the factory in Qin family village and then buy a home. Being together as a family is the true joy of life. Qin Imo naturally welcomes more young people to come back. It's not just about joining the company. The vast farmland and factories also need manpower. It's easy to recruit university students from the city, but it's hard to find those who understand farming. Chapter 235, Teacher Tony. Qin Imo. The next morning, as soon as Qin Imo woke up, he heard sounds coming from the courtyard of the nearby small Western-style house. It was the voices of Grandma 7 and Grandma 2. Qin Imo walked to the second-floor window to take a look and saw the 2 grandmothers helping each other wash their hair. This is a unique tradition of rural life. After all, for decades, there hasn't been a concept of shower heads. They could only wash their hair by pouring water over their heads. The elderly have stiff hands and lack strength, making it quite difficult to pour water over themselves. It's not uncommon for them to accidentally splash themselves or get hit by the water scoop. They had to help each other with washing their hair. As both Grandma 7 and Grandma 2 were widows and had no husbands to assist them, so they relied on one another. Now that Qin Imo has installed shower heads in every household, the elderly still aren't used to them and prefer to stick to tradition. Sister, lower your neck a bit. After Grandma 7 helped Grandma 2 comb and wash her hair, she trembled as she scooped up a ladle of warm water to rinse off the foam. With a little shake of her hand, half the ladle of water splashed directly onto Grandma 2's head. The water rolled down her silver hair, startling Grandma 2, who shrank her neck with an ouch. Oh dear, my hand slipped. Are you alright, sister? Grandma 7 quickly grabbed a towel to help dry the spilled water. Are you trying to get yourself into trouble, girl? Your hands are shaking more than a sieve. Did you sneak some rice wine again yesterday? The second elder scolded with a smile while taking a towel to wipe her face. The seventh elder wasn't angry and shot back. Isn't that because you secretly went and got a fringe like those city folks? It looks like a dog chewed it, making my palms itch. Chinemo, listening from behind the bamboo curtain on the second floor, couldn't help but chuckle and shouted from a distance, "Second elder, why didn't you tell me you wanted a hairstyle?" The two elders were joking with each other, their faces flushed but hearts calm. When they looked up and saw Chinemo, they couldn't help but feel a bit embarrassed. At their age, learning to style hair like the younger generation was quite shameful in their eyes. Chinemo ran down from his home and dashed into the second elder's courtyard. When the second elder saw him holding scissors, she quickly waved her hands. "You little rascal. Don't cause any trouble. I'm scared. A woman's hair shouldn't be messed with, even at 70. Second elder, I really have learned," Chinemo said, not boasting. The system had rewarded him with comprehensive knowledge, including beauty and hairstyling skills. So, his abilities were more than sufficient for a barbershop. Most hairstylists might not even have his level of knowledge, as the system's output is always top-notch. No. The second elder shook her head like a rattle drum, covering her hair to protect it from Chinemo. He smiled and said, "Second elder, if you keep moving like that, I might make a mistake with these scissors." The second elder was startled by his words and could only sit quietly on the wooden stool. The seventh elder, watching Chinemo pick up the scissors, was even more anxious than the second elder. "Little Emo, you really know how to cut hair?" she asked. Second sister treasures her long hair. The second elder's hair was well taken care of. Although it was silver and white, it was thick and fluffy. Seeing the two elders looking worried, Chinemo teased, "Don't worry, I've cut hair 3 times, and everyone was very satisfied." 3 times? The seventh elder relaxed a bit, but thought 3 experiences weren't many. As the fourth case, the second elder asked, 3 times? Were they for young girls or those old men in the village? Old men are different from us. They're nearly bald. They don't need me to cut their hair, Chinemo chuckled. The seventh elder laughed, realizing the old men indeed had very little hair left. "So, who did you cut hair for, little Emo?" "The first time was for a stray dog," Chinemo said, twisting a strand of the second elder's hair while gesturing with the scissors. "The second time was for a roommate who wanted a buzz cut. And the third time was for myself when I cut a fringe. Everyone was very satisfied." "You little brat, let go of my hair." The second elder was astonished, while the seventh elder burst into laughter. At that moment, Chinemo snipped away, and the first silver strand fell to the ground. "Oh dear." The seventh elder felt her heart sink, resigned to her fate. As Chinemo continued to cut, she watched the increasing clumps of hair on the ground. Her face filled with unease. On the side, Grandma Chi, whose eyes were somewhat cloudy, gradually brightened up. "All right." After Chinemo announced the end, Grandma Chi couldn't help but exclaim, "Oh my goodness." Upon hearing Grandma Chi's exclamation, second grandma was startled. "What's wrong? Did that rascal Xiaomo mess up my hair?" Second grandma quickly reached up to touch her head, but how could she feel her hairstyle with her hands? She hurriedly looked at Grandma Chi beside her and asked, "Seventh sister, what happened? Quickly get me a mirror." "Oh my gosh, it's so beautiful." Only then did Grandma Chi manage to complete her sentence. "Beautiful?" Second grandma was even more confused. Without waiting for seventh sister to find her a mirror, she rushed back into the house and dug out a mirror. When she looked into the mirror, her wrinkled face relaxed, and a radiant and delighted smile appeared. "Oh my goodness." Second grandma let out a gasp similar to Grandma Chi's. And seventh sister, who followed her in, laughed. "Second sister, I didn't lie to you, did I? Isn't it beautiful?" Second grandma nodded repeatedly and turned to Chinemo, asking, "Xiaomo, you've been learning business in the city all these years. How did you learn to cut hair?" Previously, to explain his connections and funding, Chinemo had falsely claimed that he was an assistant to a big boss in the city, learning business along the way and accumulating quite a bit of experience to return and transform Qin family village. Given Chinmo's age, there was simply no time to learn such a skill, so how could he have mastered it? Chinemo was momentarily stunned, his mind racing, and he blurted out, "Both grandmas, you don't know how difficult my previous boss was to serve. Besides business, I also had to manage daily living preferences. So, not only did I study hairstyles, but I also learned fashion design." Xiaomo had a tough time these years as well. The two grandmas didn't think much and continued to huddle in front of the mirror admiring the new hairstyle. The more second grandma looked, the more she liked it. "Xiaomo, what is this hairstyle called?" "I look 10 years younger." Seventh grandma, watching beside her, felt a bit envious, thinking that if she were only 50, outsiders would believe it. Seeing that both grandmas were satisfied, Chinemo felt quite proud. He said, "This hairstyle is called ear-length silver shattered. It's perfect for second grandma's head shape and easy to maintain." Saying that, Chinemo stepped forward, picked up a comb, and taught second grandma. "Just make sure the ends are neat, create a small arc at the temples, and comb the hair behind the ears forward with a wooden comb dampened slightly." As Chin Mo demonstrated and explained, second grandma's already satisfying hairstyle became even more benevolent looking. You still have a few strands of black hair mixed in the sunlight. It'll shine even brighter. Although Chin Mo's haircutting practice was limited, his theoretical knowledge was systematic. He was outputting a complete set of instructions, making second grandma immerse in her new hairstyle. Meanwhile, seventh grandma was feeling a bit envious and jealous. No way, Xiao Mo. You have to give me a new hairstyle too. That's easy. Chin Mo readily agreed. Soon, the news of a new hairstyle for the second grandmother spread among the elderly group chat. The second grandmother was extremely satisfied with her new look and awkwardly posted a few selfies, causing envy among the other seniors who rushed over in droves to line up. It dawned on Chin Mo that the elderly in Chin Family Village had a demand for fashion that was no less than that of people in the city. He welcomed everyone and agreed to help, but after starting, he realized that the workload was not simple. It took at least 10 minutes to cut one head of hair. And with dozens of elderly people in the village, it would take at least 10 hours to finish, assuming he didn't take any breaks. All right, let Chin Mo take a breather, someone suggested. After working tirelessly for a whole morning, Chin Mo had only managed to complete the hairstyles for 7 elders. Their radiant appearances made the others waiting in line envious. Suddenly, they heard Chin Huai call for a stop, and they couldn't help but murmur among themselves. Though they could see Chin Mo was sweating profusely and had to relent, the elderly who had received their new hairstyles were all beaming with joy. Chin Mo's skills were undeniable, whether male or female, as long as they weren't bald, he could create a suitable hairstyle. In the surrounding areas, they would undoubtedly be the most stylish individuals. Seeing that the villagers had given him a break, Chin Mo sighed in relief. At this point, Chin Tianrui, Zhang Tingting, and others came over. Mo go, I didn't expect you to know how to cut hair, Zhang Tingting remarked. As a girl, she loved beauty. And although she felt shy about competing with the elderly for a spot, her eager eyes couldn't hide her anticipation. Chin Mo rolled his eyes. He was already exhausted from cutting hair for the seniors and had no time to deal with Zhang Tingting's enthusiasm. He thought he could escape this afternoon, but not tomorrow. Little did he know, he had suddenly become the village's internet-famous hairstylist. However, the hairdressing needs of the elderly had indeed been overlooked for a long time. After reflecting on this, he turned his gaze to Chin Fengyu and Zhang Tingting. Since returning from the city, these two had tried various things with Chin Mo but hadn't found a suitable livelihood. He had advised them to go back to school, but it was clear they weren't interested in that. How about I teach you beauty and hairdressing, and you can open a salon in the village? An idea struck Chin Mo. Chin Fengyu and Zhang Tingting were young and at an age where they cared about looking cool and beautiful. More importantly, the sense of achievement Chin Mo felt from being surrounded by the elderly had sparked their interest in his suggestion. Can we reach your level, Mo go? Chin Fengyu and Zhang Tingting asked excitedly. What's so hard about it? It's not some martial arts secret. As long as you put in the effort to learn, you'll be fine, Chin Mo replied. The next morning, Chin Mo had 2 eager free helpers. The elderly also came in droves to queue up. An unexpected visitor also arrived, Lu Xian, whom Chin Mo had recommended to the enterprises in Chin Family Village a few days ago. The Chin family suggested at a meeting that Chin Village should establish its own social media presence, and soon, video accounts and official accounts were set up one after another. That day, Lu Xian received a recommendation from Chin Mo and took the initiative to introduce herself to the enterprises in Chin Village, gaining an advantage and becoming one of the cooperative hosts for the enterprises there. Chin Village also opened many areas for her, giving Lu Xian first-hand information that put her ahead of other social media creators. Today, she was supposed to film in the small villa area of Chin Village. This area was clearly separated from the living quarters of the elderly and the tourist zone. However, many tourists visiting Chin Village could see the row of villas from a distance, and people online were already curious about this area. With her special privileges as a cooperative host, Lu Xian rushed in to shoot some videos for upload and happened to encounter Chin Mo, who was giving haircuts to the elderly along with Chin Fengyu and Zhang Tingting. Just a few glances were enough for Lu Xian to pick up on something significant with her sharp instincts as a host. She quickly took out her newly purchased camera and began taking photos, while also recording videos on her phone. The footage showed the elderly folks coming out of Chin Mo's temporary barbershop, showcasing the before and after transformation. Before stepping into the room, the elderly were dressed simply like other villagers. But after turning around, their hairstyles changed dramatically, and their demeanor was completely different. The video Lu Xian posted online, combined with the recent popularity of Chin Village, quickly climbed the trending charts. Viral video title: Country Tony's Incredible Transformation. Elderly folks turn into supermodels instantly. Netizen A. Ha! What a contrast. 1 second they're in patched clothes. The next they could be on the cover of an elderly version of Vogue. Netizen B. Master Zhang's skills. Wouldn't he charge me 888 in the city? Suggesting we check if he graduated from a prestigious culinary school. Dog emoji. Netizen C. Isn't the focus on the vitality of the elderly? Look at their posture. They're way more energetic than us office workers. Netizens expressed envy and jealousy. The row of villas in the video made many city dwellers who rented homes feel envious, with some clues that had previously leaked outside. The living conditions of the elderly in Chin Village were painted as a whole. In the morning, they would go to the exclusive dining hall in Chin Village for a meal of small buns and fragrant porridge. In the afternoon, they would play and rest at the activity center, enjoying dramas and movies at the village theater. In the evening, they would pamper themselves with beauty treatments, with elderly sisters dressing up and taking selfies together. Isn't this a life of luxury? I heard that employees of Chin Village enjoy similar benefits. It's said that if you work in Chin Village for 5 years, you can obtain local household registration, allowing you to enjoy such a life in old age. Rumor has it that there are primary and middle schools established in Chin Village, with teachers from top universities in the provincial capital. Wow, with such benefits. Isn't the household registration in Chin Village more valuable than that in the capital? A bunch of young people online were shouting. Isn't developing in Chin Village more appealing than in the city? Chapter 237. Relocating graves and building temples. The barbershop matter was quickly arranged. With Chin Mo's system knowledge, siblings Chin Fengyu and Zhang Tingting quickly got the hang of things. Chin Mo spared no effort and hired a stylist at a high salary from outside to help them with their business launch. Besides the elderly residents in the village, there were now many new employees. Naturally, they had beauty and hairdressing needs, so once the barbershop opened, business was quite good. At last, these two young individuals had found a way to make a living. In the past few days, Chin Mo and Chin Tianrui secretly observed from outside and found that Chin Fengyu and Zhang Tingting genuinely enjoyed their work, learning enthusiastically and chatting happily with customers, which made them feel relieved. Chin Tianrui remarked, Chin Mo, don't be fooled by Chin Fengyu's carefree appearance. He is actually quite insecure. Chin Mo was well aware of this and nodded in agreement, noting that Zhang Tingting was similar. Both Chin Fengyu and Zhang Tingting came from broken families, being step-siblings who had changed homes and were unloved and unwanted children. They had not continued their education, although Chin Mo took good care of them after they returned to Chin Family Village. Their expressions betrayed them when they saw the fresh graduates from the village's enterprises of similar age, revealing genuine envy. Without education or stable jobs, they had little in common with those young men and women who graduated from prestigious schools in the provincial capital and aspired to bright futures, apart from their age. Their spirits were entirely different. Chin Mo had noticed this and had arranged for them to do some proper work several times, but in practice, their abilities were somewhat lacking. This time, unexpectedly, their potential was brought to light. Hearing Chin Mo's words, Chin Tianrui's face broke into a brilliant smile. He had sensed this too, and was surprised that Chin Mo shared his thoughts. All right, it seems that with you around, I can relax a bit as your second brother, Chin Tianrui said with a smile. Chin Mo chuckled at this. Regardless of their relationship, he still held some rank, but when it came to real work, Chin Tianrui was indeed the most diligent one. The reason Chin Mo had been so comfortable as a hands-off manager lately was largely due to Chin Tianrui bearing the brunt of the responsibilities. However, there was something important that needed Chin Tianrui's attention. Chin Tianrui suddenly became serious, and Chin Mo looked at him with equal seriousness. Tomb sweeping day is approaching, and I plan to call more villagers from outside back to pay respects to their ancestors, Chin Tianrui said. That's a good thing, Chin Mo replied. Not understanding what the issue was, Chin Tianrui then presented a document, which contained regulations from the county regarding the tomb sweeping activities, essentially reiterating some old issues. The most likely source of conflict stemmed from the problems related to old, abandoned graves. Chin Tianrui had already reviewed the document, and upon examining it, Chin Mo immediately understood the situation. This was not a document targeting Chin Family Village specifically, but rather a blanket regulation for the surrounding areas. Due to the issue of rural population decline, many old graves had become unclaimed and neglected. Chin Family Village faced similar problems. Although the village had developed, the number of young people returning was still low, and many families had moved away, leaving ancestral graves poorly maintained. Not to mention some ancient ancestral graves. Even the oldest elders like the second grandmother can't recognize them all. These unclaimed graves occupy a significant amount of land resources, and the local government has been wanting to unify the relocation of these graves, but the conflicts are obvious. Digging up ancestral graves is considered one of the greatest insults in traditional culture. After all, just because no one claims these abandoned graves now doesn't mean there are no descendants alive. The government officials in the county are also related to the local residents. And if they were to dig up someone else's ancestral grave, it would be quite embarrassing when they meet again in the future. Therefore, the county issues this document every year, but the effect has been minimal. However, this year is different because after the development of Chin Family Village, the land is indeed becoming insufficient. We are now contracting farmland from several nearby villages and using automated farming, but there are many areas blocked by abandoned graves, forcing us to supplement some manual labor, which is not efficient. The county noticed this and wants us to take the lead. This matter is actually beneficial for all the nearby villages. There needs to be a plan regarding the graves, otherwise it will be chaotic. Young people lose contact, and when they return home after a few years, they won't even know where their ancestral graves are. It's a good thing. But implementing it can easily offend people, so it's difficult to handle. Qin Tianrui also made a judgment. Qin Emo smiled and said it wasn't difficult. As long as there is a principle in village affairs, everything will become simple. What principle? Qin Tianrui, being a bit older than Qin Emo, couldn't quite keep up with the wisdom of doing things and asked earnestly. The principle is to satisfy one's own people first. When outsiders see this, they will naturally feel envious and jealous, and they will follow suit without being told. While Qin Emo spoke, he already had an idea in mind. He led Qin Tianrui to the old locust tree on the back mountain of Qin Family Village. This is the ancestral burial ground of Qin Family Village, with several graves nearby. Of course, some villagers have also buried their ancestors near their farmland in good locations. Since Qin Emo confirmed that the village would move this ancestral burial site, he naturally needed to get the approval of the elders first. He then took Qin Tianrui and visited each household, gathering the elders at the activity center before bringing up the matter. Before he could finish speaking, third uncle Qin Huai exploded, nearly jumping up and shouting, "The ancestral burial ground cannot be changed. This is a great sin." Second grandmother Wu Yue also nodded in agreement. Xiao Emo, the village can change anything, but how can we disturb the resting place of our ancestors? Qin Guofu, as the village secretary, naturally knew about the county's policies over the years. He pulled Qin Emo aside and whispered, "Xiao Emo, our Qin family village doesn't lack for those subsidies right now. So why make the elders uneasy? This grave matter seems to concern the deceased ancestors, but in reality, it is about the living. Whether the deceased can rest in peace after the relocation is uncertain, but the living are mostly anxious about it." Qin Guofu pulled Qin Emo aside and whispered, fearing that Qin Emo might have a falling out with the elders over this issue. Qin Emo understood Qin Guofu's good intentions and quietly replied, "Uncle Guofu, don't worry." Hearing Qin Mo's words, Qin Guofu displayed a look of skepticism. Over the past 2 years, Qin Mo's abilities have become somewhat incomprehensible to him. Since he seems so confident, this matter should be manageable. Qin Emo walked back in front of the elderly couple and patiently asked, "Grandpa and Grandma, why can't we change the ancestral graves?" Chapter 238. No room for dispute. Upon hearing this, Qin Huai furrowed his brows. This ancient tradition made it difficult for him to articulate a reason immediately. After thinking for a moment, he said, "First, it's a matter of traditional customs, and then there's the concept of feng shui. In short, it's about disturbing our ancestors' graves. It just doesn't sit right with us." Qin Huai spoke plainly, and the others nodded in agreement. Frankly speaking, this issue revolves around traditional customs. If we don't adhere to these traditions, everyone feels a bit uneasy, as if we are letting down our ancestors. Qin Emo smiled and asked, "Dear grandparents, has our Qin village been thriving in recent years?" Qin Huai and the others fell silent. If it weren't for Qin Mo's extraordinary efforts, the village would have been a standard empty nest village by now. Forget about the modern facilities like the activity center, there are hardly any streetlights. Under these circumstances, it would be unreasonable to claim that the village is thriving. It's not that our ancestors are not watching over us. Rather, the initial burial was somewhat hasty. Qin Emo didn't make things up. Given the past economic strength of Qin village, having a proper coffin during the burial would have been considered a lavish funeral. The burial grounds on the back mountain are also poorly maintained, with weeds taller than people on many neglected graves. It would be quite benevolent of our ancestors not to scold us in dreams, given the state of their resting place. When Qin Emo had taken Qin Tianrui to the back mountain earlier, he snapped some photos and uploaded them to the village group. Once the villagers saw them, they understood the situation. Qin village used to be home to over 1,000 people, but now, excluding the workers from Qin Village Enterprises, there are fewer than 100 residents left, most of whom are elderly. They can barely take care of their own parents' graves, let alone clean others. It truly is a bit disheartening. This Qingming festival, let us all pitch in and help clean up. Qin Guofu had already grasped Qin Mo's intentions and deliberately added, "Qin Mo, I've heard you mention the feng shui. With the ongoing construction and transformation in our village, the layout has subtly changed. The old burial site is at a lower elevation now, and the water source isn't as good as it used to be. If this continues, it might affect our village's fortune. Society has changed, and we must adapt," Qin Mo continued. "Relocating the graves might be a disturbance, but it's a temporary one, meant to allow our ancestors to rest in a better place. Additionally, I plan to renovate the ancestral hall, which means we need to compile a list of our ancestors' names and update the records. We must let future generations know where we came from and where our roots lie. Qin Mo's words gradually touched the hearts of the elders, especially Qin Huai. Leaning on his cane, he pondered for a long time before slowly speaking. Xiao Mo, you make a valid point, but relocating graves always leaves one feeling uneasy. This unease was something Qin Mo found hard to empathize with. After all, the education that the elderly received since childhood was vastly different from modern education. However, Qin Mo could not fully understand but knew how to respond. Third Grandpa, you don't need to worry about this matter. I have invited Master Fangzheng from Zhenghua Temple to preside over it. Master Fangzheng. This truly was a name that carried weight. Qin Mo knew that mentioning this master would be more effective than any argument he could make. Looking at everyone's reactions, he smiled and said, he is indeed the renowned Master Fangzheng, famous in the surrounding areas. With this final card in hand, the doubts of the elderly folks faded away. What Qin Mo had said previously was already reasonable, and with Master Fangzheng's support, any lingering unease had long dissipated. With the Qingming festival approaching, Qin Mo wanted to have new graves for his ancestors ready in time. He sped up the process of relocating graves and repairing the ancestral hall. However, when news of the grave relocation reached neighboring villages, it sparked a wave of skepticism. Under the old locust tree at the village entrance, a few outsiders watched as the people from Qin family village prepared to excavate graves, pointing and whispering among themselves. Qin family village is going to face divine retribution. They're even moving their ancestors' graves for a bit of money. They say you can't make money without being ruthless. Just look at how the tall buildings have sprung up in Qin family village. Isn't that all thanks to their harshness? A few middle-aged men from neighboring villages mocked them. Their envy of Qin family village's development had been brewing for some time. Shut your mouth. Qin Huai, overhearing, cursed loudly. The outsiders were hesitant to confront him. Third Grandpa, we're not just talking nonsense. That kid Qin Mo doesn't understand things, and you don't either. You can't just move ancestral graves. There will be consequences. Consequences, my foot. Qin Huai retorted. Our Qin family village is thriving. We have people and money. We're selling chicken legs all the way to the provincial capital, and our village brand even has ads on social media. If this is our retribution, then we deserve it. You should take care of your own matters. His words left the outsiders speechless. Now, Qin family village was famous far and wide. A typical internet celebrity village. Deep down, they could only feel envy and jealousy. Seizing this opportunity to mock them was their way of seeking psychological balance. But they didn't expect to be called out by Qin Huai. At that moment, Qin Liangping, Wei Yu, and others also gathered around. They could oppose Qin Mo internally, but outsiders had no right to criticize him. Faced with the fierce elderly folks, the outsiders quickly retreated, moving away and daring not to speak further. Soon, Qin Mo specially invited Master Fangzheng, who brought 2 ceremonial assistants, and the grave relocation ceremony officially began. First, the assistants led the ritual, while the clan members, dressed in plain clothes, held incense and candles, kneeling solemnly before the grave. The assistants recited the sacrificial text in a loud and dignified voice, with each word seemingly carrying the teachings and hopes of their ancestors. Then, Master Fangzheng, holding a compass, carefully examined the location and orientation of the grave, ensuring that the new burial site conformed to the principles of feng shui. The excavation began, and Qin Mo personally took the first shovel. With a spade in hand, he dug carefully, fearing to disturb the rest of his ancestors. The elderly folks of Qin family village also stepped forward to help, proceeding with every step according to ancient rites, treating each phase from digging to unearthing the bones with solemnity and reverence. After the remains were unearthed, Qin Mo carefully wrapped them in red cloth and placed them in a special coffin. The coffin was adorned with exquisite patterns and the names of ancestors. Behind him, Qin Tianrui was responsible for recording the names, which would be inscribed on the stone wall of the newly built ancestral hall. One by one, the coffins were slowly lifted by family members along the village path toward the new burial site. Along the way, drums and music played, and firecrackers sounded. The onlookers from other villages felt a sense of reverence at this scene. Such rituals did not appear to be a desecration of the ancestors. Instead, they conveyed a sense of sacredness. Chapter 239. Title of Advanced Village. The significant initiative of relocating graves and repairing the ancestral hall in Qin family village was like a giant stone thrown into a tranquil lake, instantly creating ripples that stirred the entire village and surrounding areas. The village's social media account uploaded a series of meticulously edited videos. In these videos, during the solemn grave relocation ceremony, the villagers appeared respectful, and every action was filled with reverence for their ancestors. The brand new ancestral hall stood tall, showcasing its ancient charm. The neatly arranged spirit tablets recorded the stories of the ancestors of Qin family village. Once these videos were uploaded, they spread rapidly across the internet, as if they had grown wings. Initially, there was only limited attention, like a few ripples on a calm lake. However, as the videos continued to gain traction, comments from netizens surged in waves, creating a lively atmosphere. So this is what a rural grave relocation ceremony looks like. It's so solemn. Every step is filled with respect for the ancestors. This is what traditional culture should look like. It really opened my eyes. In the city, we just get a box for ashes and call it a day. There's no comparison to Qin family village. It's like a world apart. It's not that we can't have such ceremonies, but first, you need to have the means. The standard package costs 88,000, which not everyone can afford. Sigh. It's better to return to the village for burial. Looking at Qin Family Village's new ancestral hall and the neatly arranged spirit tablets, it feels ancient and solemn. Almost like taking me back to the past. I truly envy that. Not only were netizens actively discussing in the comments, but county leaders also liked the videos and recognized this commendable act of Qin Family Village. The smart officials responsible for promoting grave relocation in the county even had leaders sign off, sending bright red flags to commend Qin Family Village for its efforts in promoting traditional culture. On the day of the new ancestral hall's opening ceremony, sunlight bathed the land of Qin Family Village, seemingly enveloping the entire village in a sacred glow. Villagers donned traditional attire, their expressions solemn, and each action resembled a carefully choreographed dance, filled with respect for their ancestors. The solemn ceremony showed no sign of desecrating the ancestors. Instead, it was like a vivid painting that fully expressed their reverence. Soon, this news spread like wildfire in the surrounding areas. Curious and envious, people from nearby villages rushed over to witness it for themselves. As they stepped into the village, they were greeted by the impressive new ancestral hall, adorned with intricate carvings and flying eaves, as if they had traveled back to ancient times. Entering the hall, they saw rows of brand new memorial tablets inscribed with the names of their ancestors, filling their hearts with envy. The villagers had the simplest wish, to leave their names after death, so that their descendants would remember them for 100 years or so. The new ancestral hall and the memorial tablets in the village seemed to show them that this was indeed possible. During the Qingming festival, fine rain fell gently, like cow hair, lightly drizzling down onto the earth. The village welcomed more young people returning from all directions. Some had been working far away for years, toiling for their livelihoods. Others were striving in big cities, working hard for their dreams. They often didn't return home even during the new year, but at Qingming, the strongest sense of traditional obligation surged from deep within them. Not returning home to pay respects to their ancestors was equivalent to allowing their forebears to become wandering souls, which was considered the greatest disrespect in Chinese tradition. In the past, when they returned home, they would each find their family graves and tend to them separately. Besides the grand ceremonies held every 3 to 5 years, opportunities for them to meet during Qingming were rare. Now, with a unified place for paying respects, they no longer scattered but gathered at the ancestral hall. The young people sat together, sharing their experiences from outside, exchanging the joys and sorrows of life, creating a lively atmosphere. Some recounted amusing stories from big cities, causing everyone to burst into laughter. Others expressed the hardships of working hard away from home, resonating with the crowd. Grandma sat nearby, watching the young people laugh and talk, her face beaming with satisfaction. She turned to Grandpa and remarked, "Old 3. Our village seems to have come alive. In the past, the young ones all left, and the village was so quiet. Now it's different." Grandpa Qin Huai nodded repeatedly, his eyes sparkling with joy, saying, "Yes, I never expected that this controversial move of relocating graves and renovating the hall could bring people together. It seems we made the right decision." The older folks had long wished for more young people to return. At this moment, everyone showcased their talents, sharing the changes and benefits in Qin Family Village. Some elders spoke of the solemnity of the new ancestral hall, while others talked about the improved environment of the village, instilling greater expectations in the young people for their hometown. After Qingming, when people from other villages saw the changes in Qin Family Village, they felt a stir of desire. They began to follow suit, planning to relocate graves and renovate their own ancestral halls, hoping their villages could also become as lively as Qin Family Village. Upon learning of this situation, the county government promptly announced relevant subsidies, and the organization of neglected and old graves finally advanced throughout the surrounding areas. County officials then approached Qin Mo, sincerely expressing their gratitude. "Qin Mo, it's thanks to your leadership that this trend has developed, allowing our county's traditional culture to be better passed down. You have done a great service for our county." Qin Mo smiled in response. "This is the result of everyone's hard work. I merely did what I was supposed to do." I still say, everything should be based on what the Qin Family Village agrees upon. If the elders are not happy with something, I wouldn't do it. After all, the development of our village relies on everyone. Just then, a long-awaited system notification echoed in Qin Mo's mind. The host is striving for the title of an advanced village for Qin Family Village. Reward, a piece of ancient jade. Immediately, a piece of jade radiating a warm luster appeared in Qin Mo's hand. He examined the jade carefully. Its texture was delicate, and the patterns were clear, indicating it was of considerable value. However, Qin Mo did not focus too much on its worth. A thought suddenly flashed in his mind: an antique street. Although Qin family village is located in a remote area, there are many old items in the village. Those ancient farming tools, exquisite porcelain, and faded paintings all carry the memories of time. Moreover, the vintage equipment from the old film crew adds to the charm. If they could create a real antique street, just imagining it gave Qin Mo a pleasant vision. Tourists could stroll along the quaint streets, admire ancient artifacts, and experience a strong atmosphere of traditional culture, as if they had traveled back in time. Chapter 240. Is Qin family village being sued? The more Qin Mo thought about it, the more brilliant the idea seemed. It might be the biggest opportunity for Qin family village. He immediately gathered several young people, including Qin Tianrui, Qin Fengyu, and Zhang Tingting, to discuss it. Qin Mo shared his thoughts, and everyone's eyes lit up upon hearing it. Qin Tianrui excitedly slapped his thigh, saying that there was no need to think twice. Once Qin Mo took the lead, the elders would certainly support it. They loved to show off their antiques, and now they had a chance for more people to see them. They would be thrilled. Old Master Qin Liangping was always fiddling with his ivory chess set. Not to sell it, but mainly to show off. The villagers were a bit annoyed with his ivory chessboard, as both Qin Mo and Qin Tianrui had heard countless stories about it. Others in the village also possessed some antiques, more or less, and they all wanted to show them off. Qin Fengyu and Zhang Tingting nodded in agreement. The elderly loved to share their old possessions, and even if we didn't appreciate them, some might actually be valuable. Besides, our village's antique charm is perfect for this business. When tourists come, they can not only admire the antiques, but also see the traditional Qin family village gardens, the old dramas, and film crews at the village entrance, all of which are culturally distinctive. Everyone felt this was a fantastic idea and expressed their support. Qin Mo wasted no time and made a decisive call. The next morning, he specifically allocated an area next to the Qin family village gardens to Song Qingfeng. This Mr. Song, who had transformed from a small renovation crew leader into the head of a small but growing construction company, had already made up his mind to firmly support Qin Mo. He envisioned his future blueprint to help Qin Mo develop Qin family village, which could sustain his business for a decade. Creating an antique street in line with the garden's traditional style? Simple. Song Qingfeng confidently agreed, adding that he would reserve more shop spaces for Qin Mo, as any commercial street would inevitably have dining needs. By then, when tourists got tired from shopping, there would be a place for them to eat and rest. Song Qingfeng is not only experienced in engineering, but has also put in a lot of effort in planning. After finishing his daytime work, he even takes time in the evenings to self-study various courses, all to make this antique street even more perfect. Qin Mo looked at this familiar figure with a round belly and smiled. It seems that our boss Song has made quite a bit of progress during this period. Anyway, I have expressed my thoughts clearly, and you will be responsible for all the details. I believe you can definitely make this antique street vibrant and colorful. Rest assured. Song Qingfeng nodded in agreement. Soon, news broke that Kinjiakin was going to create a new commercial street specifically for trading old antiques, with the title of a popular village. Many merchants from the provincial capital came to inquire about renting spaces as soon as the news was out. They recognized the development potential of Kinjiakin and hoped to get a piece of the pie. The elderly folks also began to rummage through their treasures stored in old wooden boxes, ready to bring them out as the village's prized possessions. The entire Kinjiakin was immersed in this new preparatory activity. However, just when everyone was still caught up in their daily work rhythm, the Kinjiakin Enterprise received a shocking piece of news like a thunderclap. What? The Endless Group has officially sued us. A lawyer's letter has been sent to the company? The next day, Qin Tianrui arrived at the company as usual. As soon as he took his seat, he heard his assistant rushing in, panting and flustered, filled with urgency and fear. Upon hearing the news, Qin Tianrui's heart sank, and his face turned pale. It turned out that the commercial competition between the Endless Group and the Kinjiakin Enterprise had been brewing in the shadows for nearly half a year. The Endless Group is undoubtedly the leader in the chicken and ready-to-eat food market, with a significant market share and immense brand influence. However, the Kinjiakin Enterprise, leveraging a low-price strategy, charged through the market like a dark horse, squeezing the Endless Group to the point of distress. Although the Endless Group is large and well-established, capable of enduring losses for 3 to 5 years without concern, they had to be fully alert to respond to the fierce attack from the Kinjiakin Enterprise. Meanwhile, the Kinjiakin Enterprise was fully prepared for a protracted battle, with the entire company gearing up to compete head-on with the Endless Group. But no one expected the Endless Group to suddenly unleash a surprising move at this moment. Qin Tianrui understood that the Kinjiakin Enterprise carries the hopes and livelihoods of the entire village, and he couldn't afford to be the slightest bit negligent. nor could he joke with the lives and fortunes of the villagers. Thus, he quickly rushed to find Qin Mo to discuss countermeasures. When Qin Mo arrived at the office, he saw the management team with their heads down, not daring to breathe, their eyes filled with anxiety and unease, like a group of children who had done something wrong. Unable to meet Qin Mo's gaze, no one has thought of a way to respond. Looking at this demoralized management team, Qin Mo already understood that the situation was likely worse than he had imagined. Qin Tianrui steadied himself and began to explain the situation in detail. The Endless Group is suing us for unfair competition. Moreover, they possess a crucial piece of evidence. A corporate spy secretly infiltrated our company and stole key data. As he spoke, Qin Tianrui handed the information from the opposing lawyer's letter to Qin Mo for review. The reason Endless Group dared to resort to litigation this time is precisely because they hold this critical evidence. In fact, the product prices of the Qin Family Village Enterprises are indeed absurdly low, operating well below Endless Group's cost line. Within the Qin Family Village Enterprises, when employees learned of this news, their morale instantly plummeted. They all understood that Endless Group was well prepared this time, and with this critical piece of evidence, they were almost certain to lose this lawsuit. However, upon hearing this, Qin Mo simply smiled. "Chairman, how can you still smile?" A manager couldn't help but ask. Looking at Qin Mo's calm demeanor, even Qin Tianrui was puzzled by Qin Mo's reaction, looking at him with curiosity. Facing the confused gazes of everyone, Qin Mo smiled again. "Are you all not understanding the operational logic of our Qin Family Village brand? Are you really scared by this? From the very beginning, we have adopted a smallholder farming model, so our commercial costs cannot be compared to their corporate model." Smallholder farming? Some people suddenly realized. But more were still looking at Qin Mo in confusion. Chapter 241. Confidence and response. Seeing that most people still looked puzzled, Qin Mo cleared his throat and patiently began to explain. "The reason our Qin Family Village chicken products can be so cheap is fundamentally because we have always followed the smallholder farming approach. Although I invested some money to establish factories and farms, the Qin Family Village brand is essentially different from the corporate chicken farming model of Endless Group. Endless Group is a large enterprise with massive, modern chicken farms equipped with automated and standardized farming equipment. From feed delivery, environmental control, to health monitoring of the flocks, every aspect relies on advanced technology and a large number of specialized technicians, all of which contribute to their fixed costs, and those costs are not low. From chick procurement, feed supply, disease prevention and treatment, to the processing, transportation, and marketing of chicken meat, every link requires huge financial investment. When these costs are distributed across each chicken, the price naturally cannot come down. The processes Jiang Wang mentioned were well understood by the senior management present. However, our Qin Family Village brand is different. Only 1/3 of our chicken comes from scaled production, while the vast majority is from individual smallholder farming. What? Many in the management were taken aback. Not everyone had access to the company's detailed financial settlement status. They only had a rough idea that the company purchased broilers from local villagers in nearby villages. This was quite common, but the ratio Jiang Wang mentioned was surprising to them. They learned for the first time today that the majority of the chickens sourced by the Qin Family Village brand actually came from scattered purchases. In the villages and towns, every household has its own small yard or a piece of forest land where they raise and manage their animals. Many of the breeding processes are completed on familiar land, and the tools for raising animals are simple and readily available. For the villagers, raising chickens is almost an instinctive activity. Most people do it not for sale, but to raise some free-range chickens for consumption during festivals and celebrations. However, ever since a company sent out purchase invitations to these villages, many villagers have increased the number of chickens they raise. This is almost a zero-cost endeavor for them. They simply need to scatter a bit more feed. Such a minimal investment can yield additional income, which is hardly met with any opposition. Moreover, the labor force in the village mainly consists of the elderly and children. The elderly may not be able to do heavy work, but they can help feed the chickens and clean the chicken coops. Children, after school, can also come to provide water for the chickens and collect eggs. Their demands for compensation are low, perhaps just a meal or a bit of pocket money. This is something that would be impossible in large enterprises, where they have to pay employees according to market rates and provide various insurances, which incurs significant expenses. Then, why didn't the villagers raise chickens before? Or why didn't they sell their chickens at market prices, but instead offered us such generous deals? A well-educated person from the city listening to the explanation was puzzled. In a market economy, how could the villagers be willing to let a company benefit so much? The price for the meat chickens sold to the company is quite low. If the quantity were small, it could be understood, but now that it is so large, it seems to them that the villagers are at a loss. Hearing this question, Qin Mo couldn't help but smile. Qin Tianrui, standing nearby, had already understood the situation completely. He took over the conversation and said, "I get this. Including our village, The reason why these villages were so poor in the past was mainly due to their remoteness. Who doesn't know that raising chickens can make money? But how can villagers sell their chickens in the market? As a local villager, Qin Tianrui was well aware of the struggles involved. In the past, when they went to the county town for school, they had to walk dozens of kilometers along mountain roads, which even the young people found difficult. If an elderly person raised over 100 chickens and wanted to transport them to the county for sale, it could be life-threatening. But how much are 100 chickens worth? Spending 3 to 4 months to earn 2 to 3,000 yuan while risking one's life is simply not cost-effective. What we provide for the villagers is a smooth transportation environment. We can even go to each household to collect the chickens personally. For the villagers, this significantly reduces the time and labor costs in the sales and transportation process, making them willing to sell chickens to us at a slightly lower price. At this point, everyone present understood. Logistics and transportation are costs that our brand already needs to invest in. Adding some routes is just a matter of minor fuel expenses, which is almost zero cost. The merger of two zero-cost businesses has resulted in the powerful, yet affordable and high-quality chicken products from Kanjiakan. The Endless Group is using our pricing to claim that we are engaging in malicious competition, which is simply unfounded. They do not understand our business model at Kanjiakan and have hastily jumped to conclusions based solely on superficial observations. Therefore, we will not lose this lawsuit. Qin Mo's words made everyone present nod in agreement, and the previously low morale began to rise again. Hope was rekindled in their eyes. However, pursuing a lawsuit is still a time-consuming and labor-intensive matter. Although Kanjiakan has a legal department, there is still a significant gap compared to the legal resources of a large group like the Endless Group, so external assistance is necessary. Qin Mo quickly realized this, picked up his phone, and dialed a number. The call connected swiftly, and a familiar voice came through. It was Song Xian, Qin Mo's VIP banking advisor. Over the past year, as the Kanjiakan brand surged, she had climbed to a higher position and is now the deputy manager of the corporate department at the bank. As soon as she learned that Qin Mo needed help, she readily agreed and began making arrangements. The next morning, she personally arrived, dressed in a deep gray business suit that accentuated her tall and slender figure. With her dark hair neatly styled up, she exuded confidence and competence. Accompanying Song Xian was a beautiful female lawyer in a cream-colored dress, radiating a gentle and graceful aura, with a subtle smile that made her features appear picturesque, bringing a refreshing feeling. Song Xian smiled as she introduced, Qin Mo, this is Lawyer Li Yu, who has extensive experience in commercial litigation. Qin Mo politely shook hands with Lawyer Li Yu, and then everyone sat down to discuss the lawsuit. Chapter 242, The Victory of Kanjiakan. Li Yu had done her homework. She took out a document and handed it to Qin Mo, saying, Mr. Qin, I have already understood the preliminary situation. Based on the current circumstances, you can feel free to engage in delays with the other party. In fact, this presents a great publicity opportunity for you. Qin Mo looked at her with interest and nodded with a smile. This is exactly what I was hoping for. It seems you understand my intent. Of course, Li Yu replied with a sweet smile. As a large enterprise, the Endless Group inherently possesses high visibility. Once they engage in a lawsuit with Kanjiakan, it will undoubtedly become a hot topic in society, attracting media coverage and effectively providing free publicity for the Kanjiakan brand. Qin Mo's eyes lit up upon hearing this, and he gave Song Xian a thumbs up. It seems the person you recommended is as reliable as you are. I'll leave this matter to you. The compensation will be generous. Soon, Kanjiakan's formal response to the lawsuit was confirmed. The news spread like wildfire across the neighboring villages. Those villagers who were still working in the fields and unaware of the situation were taken aback by the news. A few elders from Wangjiakan, puffing on their dry tobacco, wore worried expressions. What will we do if Qin Mo's company goes down because of this lawsuit? In the past, many families in our village were able to acquire new items thanks to our collaboration with him. If we lose this source of income in the future, life will become quite difficult. Indeed, I hope to earn more money to save up for my son's marriage. The Ansinli family village are also anxious, worrying about their future livelihoods. Previously, life was looking up as we raised chickens with Qin Mo. But if we lose the lawsuit and the enterprise in Qin family village disappears, what will we do with our chickens? If we can't sell them, how will our families manage to eat and live? We can't help much, just anxiously waiting and hoping that the enterprise in Qin family village can pull through. Otherwise, life will be tough for us. Meanwhile, the workers from other villages helping with chicken farming are also feeling restless, their hearts racing with anxiety. Soon, these complaints and worries reached Qin family village. Qin Mo knew that soothing everyone with words wouldn't help at this moment, so he simply stayed behind closed doors, patiently waiting for a favorable outcome in the lawsuit. However, the villagers didn't understand the law. They only heard that their opponent was a super large enterprise from the provincial capital. Seeing Qin Mo shut away only made them more anxious. Was he also at a loss and hiding away? Perhaps he was afraid and ready to admit defeat. What should we do? We can't just watch as Qin Mo's company disappears like that. Various speculations and worries spread among the crowd, making the elderly in Qin Family Village restless. In stark contrast to the gloom in Qin Family Village, the news brought joy to the unending group. The manager of the marketing department responsible for this matter was laughing heartily, sitting in his luxurious office with his legs crossed, filled with delight at seeing Qin Mo's reaction. "We are bound to win this lawsuit." A subordinate nodded, saying that the legal department agreed as well. He even suggested that we offer a settlement now, as Qin Family Village would have no choice but to accept our terms. The marketing manager sneered, his gaze sharp. "Settlement? No way. This time, I want to deliver a heavy blow to the drowning dog, making the company recognize our contributions, and then promotions and raises for us will be within reach." He laughed wildly, as if he could already see Qin Family Village's enterprise going bankrupt and himself being rewarded for it. Finally, the day of the court hearing arrived. The courtroom was packed, and numerous media outlets were there to cover the proceedings, ready to report the first-hand news. However, the intense courtroom debate that everyone expected did not occur. When the legal representative of Qin Family Village, Li Yu, presented the evidence, the opponent was left dumbfounded. It turned out that Qin Mo's company operated on a farmer-based production model, which not only ensured the quality of the chicken meat, but also helped surrounding farmers become prosperous together. Moreover, the company provided farmers with equipment and chick feed for free, genuinely benefiting them. The evidence detailed the cooperation agreements between the company and the farmers, records of equipment distribution, and the supply situation of chick feed, all clearly documented. The lawyer for Qin Family Village delivered a passionate speech in court. "Ladies and gentlemen, Qin Family Village Enterprise has always upheld the principles of honest business practices and giving back to society. Our cooperation with farmers is mutually beneficial. We provide assistance to farmers, and in return, they supply us with high-quality agricultural products. This model not only promotes the development of the rural economy, but also allows consumers to enjoy safe and healthy food. However, a certain group has maliciously slandered us for their own interests, which is both unethical and illegal." This news quickly spread online, and netizens reacted strongly. "Oh, it turns out the Qin Family Village brand is involved in poverty alleviation. I misunderstood them before. Wow, they provide chicks and feed, and then come to collect the grown chickens? This work can be done by both the elderly and children. This company is genuinely committed to benefiting the left-behind elderly and children. This is a truly conscientious enterprise, and their products are high quality and reasonably priced. So I must support them. Without further ado, from now on, I will only buy chicken legs from Qin Family Village." The popularity of the related topic continued to rise, and public opinion overwhelmingly favored Qin Mo's company, like a surging tide that swiftly pulled the rival company into the center of the controversy. Major news outlets and social media platforms reported on the incident, with headlines growing increasingly eye-catching. "Conscientious company makes a comeback, heartless rivals suffer." Qin Family Village brand's poverty alleviation efforts wrongly accused. Certain groups' capitalist face exposed. The news flooded in, and the rival company seemed to be caught in a storm, on the verge of collapse. In the meeting room of the rival group, the earlier excitement over a predicted legal victory had vanished, replaced by a heavy silence. A stock price chart for the group was displayed on the screen, and as everyone watched the continuously fluctuating red numbers, it felt as if their hearts were about to leap out of their throats. The chairman of the rival group was also in a state of panic. He had relied heavily on financing through his company's stock, and if this continued, their cash flow would be cut off. He slammed the table and shouted angrily, "How could this happen? How did it turn out like this? You useless bunch, who told me this lawsuit was a sure win?" The marketing manager lowered his head and quietly said, "Boss, we didn't expect the Qin Family Village Enterprise to have such a strategy. They have always been involved in poverty alleviation and helping farmers. We never thought these would become their weapons for counterattack." The chairman of the rival group trembled with anger, pointing at the marketing manager and scolding, "You don't even understand the situation of the opponent, yet you dare to put the company at the center of this controversy? What do I pay you people for?" Chapter 243. Conflict of interest. The reputation of the rival group rapidly plummeted, becoming an irreversible fact. In contrast, the Qin Family Village brand gained fame through its poverty alleviation efforts, high-quality products at reasonable prices, and environmentally friendly rural production concepts. Seizing this opportunity, we expanded the Qin Family Village brand beyond the province. Currently, we are mainly focused on wholesale, allowing local agents to distribute at the next level. In a meeting at the Qin Family Village Company, good news came one after another. A factory originally built by Qin Mo to accommodate local production has truly emerged from the mountains and reached the national market. Given the current situation, it seems that the dragon is about to soar. Chairman, these days we have been receiving calls from investment banks expressing interest in investing in our Qin Family Village brand and promoting our company's listing. What are your thoughts on this? At this point, the management team present at the meeting had a glint in their eyes. When they first arrived in the remote Qin family village, Qin Mo had given them some shares as an incentive. His intention was to make them small shareholders in the company, providing them with a sense of belonging for their hard work. However, if the company goes public, the value of those shares will skyrocket. The management team could potentially become millionaires in an instant, earning more than they could in a lifetime of hard work. The wealth of Qin Mo and the people of Qin family village would also surge, as any listed company today has a market value of at least several billion. Qin Mo looked at the people in the conference room, his heart clear yet troubled. The magic of rural entrepreneurship lies in the ease of escaping poverty. However, once wealth is attained, maintaining one's original intentions becomes difficult. Once every household and employee has some money, the tendency to relax and enjoy life will overshadow the habit of hard work. After all, no one truly loves labor. The diligent villagers are merely driven by the necessity of life. The same goes for the employees and executives in the company. If they see that shares post-listing could sell for millions, can they really continue to stay in Qin family village? Once the shares are sold, enjoying the vibrant city life becomes their choice. It's not that Qin Mo doesn't want the villagers and employees to live well. The issue is that this wealth comes from the money of shareholders, not from genuinely creating market value. After a long silence, Qin Mo finally spoke. Our company does not lack money and does not need financing. Our current focus should be on production and sales. As soon as these words left his mouth, the bright eyes in the room dimmed considerably. Qin Mo knew this would inevitably dampen morale, but it would also filter out those who were overly eager for quick success. The Qin family village enterprise prioritizes the village over the business. Our goal has never been simply to make money. Anyone looking to profit from the company's fame by selling it should adjust their mindset early on. After Qin Mo finished speaking, he left the meeting. However, there were naturally dissenters in the conference room. It's easy for him to say. He is from Qin family village and naturally feels comfortable here. We came here to make money, didn't we? Indeed, going public would be beneficial for him. And there's no loss involved. Yet he is holding us back from realizing the benefits of our shares. Who doesn't he know? He wants to bind talent to Qin family village, as the equity incentive becomes void if they leave. The growing strength of the Qin family village brand has naturally attracted many professional managers. These executives are indeed capable, but they are also here for profit. Now that they see the pie of the Qin family village enterprise getting bigger but their shares shrinking, they are starting to feel discontent. However, within the Qin family village enterprise, there are both professional managers and a large number of fresh graduates. These graduates come from all walks of life, many of whom also hail from rural backgrounds. They are very familiar with the situation in Qin family village and are quite envious. Today, Qin family village is far more developed than their hometown, with various facilities in place. More importantly, they were entrusted with significant responsibilities upon their arrival, which naturally leads to a high level of loyalty to the Qin family village brand. Some individuals, even after just 2 years, are already qualified to participate in this conference. They listened to the complaints of the professional managers about the company and stood up to defend the company and Qin Mo. Mr. Zhu, Mr. Huang. That's not how it is. When you came here, didn't the company already discuss your compensation with you? Now that the salaries are being paid normally, no one is infringing on your interests. If you feel that the salary and benefits are not suitable, you shouldn't have come here in the first place. Rather than saying these things now, the one speaking up was a young man who had just graduated with a master's degree and was entrusted with important responsibilities by Qin Mo. Upon being called out, Mr. Zhu and Mr. Wang immediately turned to glare at him. Mr. Zhu sneered and said, "Young people really don't know the heights of heaven and depths of the earth. Do you think the treatment you get in Qin family village is great? The outside world is vast. You should know that some companies provide their executives with equity incentives worth tens of millions every year, and those executives might not even generate much profit for the company. Look at us, working hard in this remote place, achieving such great company performance that investment banks are willing to take the company public. Isn't this the time for everyone to make money together?" The chairman, with one statement, has denied the possibility of going public, which means we each lose out on hundreds of thousands. The chairman naturally has his own considerations. He has made it clear that he does not want to turn the Qin family village brand into a trendy brand that would just be sold off for quick cash. The chairman clearly wants to use poultry products as an entry point to transform Qin family village and even nearby villages into a processing industry for agricultural products. This is truly a good thing that benefits the villagers in the surrounding areas. The young man argued his point, but received nothing but a disdainful look from another Mr. Wang. "Young man, you really are naive, or have you been brainwashed? Working is just working. What is all this talk about rural development and business growth? We came to work for money, didn't we? Do you really plan to settle down in Qin family village for life? What's wrong with that? In Qin family village, I have both career development and security in life. Didn't Chairman Qin say that once the nearby residential buildings are completed, we will have priority for purchase, and the company will provide interest-free loans? This is the latest benefit set by Qin Mo. With interest-free loans, as long as employees are willing to buy, they can settle down in Qin Family Village with regular payments. This is actually a key step for Qin Mo to attract talent to Qin Family Village. The population of Qin Family Village is sparse, and that has become a fact. Guiding more old villagers to return is one aspect, while attracting newcomers is another important part. In Qin Mo's vision, he plans to develop Qin Family Village as a brand new city. Isn't it similar to the development of provincial capitals, gradually transforming urban villages into modern cities? Chapter 244, Dragon Boat Festival. Hearing the words of the young man, both Mr. Zhu and Mr. Wang were truly dumbfounded. Their values were completely different. They had no intention of staying here, so the benefits of interest-free loans for buying houses meant nothing to them. They only wanted to make a quick profit and then return to the big city. Such discussions naturally led to no results, and soon everyone dispersed unhappily, with internal tensions beginning to rise within the Qin Family Village enterprises. A group represented by Mr. Zhu and Mr. Wang wanted to control the key sales processes of the company, using this as leverage to negotiate with Qin Mo for an IPO. They would only be satisfied if they could convert their shares into cash. Otherwise, they would only receive a portion of the profits each year based on their shareholding ratio. While that was still a considerable amount, it was too slow compared to directly selling their shares for cash. On the other hand, a group of young graduates entering Qin Family Village saw their career development and future possibilities here. They were not so eager for quick gains and had no thoughts of selling their shares. The differing philosophies led to open and covert struggles between the two sides. This was, of course, a situation that could not be concealed for long. Qin Tianrui worked at the company every day and soon learned about the matter. He quickly found Qin Mo to report it. Let them fight it out. Qin Mo remained indifferent. Qin Tianrui was puzzled and anxiously pressed on. But those young guys can't compare to the cunning professional managers. If the important channels of the Qin Family Village brand are really controlled by those professionals, we might have to yield. Is the impact of going public really that significant for the company? Why not just go along with their wishes and get the company listed? I've learned quite a bit, and it seems that going public might not necessarily affect our operations. We would still hold controlling shares. Whether it affects operations is one part. More importantly, once listed, the company must report its internal situation to the public and disclose financial reports annually. However, the purpose of establishing the Qin Family Village brand was to help the surrounding areas through commercialization. If we have to accept so much oversight, many things would become difficult to manage. Qin Tianrui suddenly understood. If the company were to go public, certain projects would have to go through formal bidding processes to ensure shareholders' rights and secure high-quality contractors at lower prices. But if the Qin Family Village company is not listed, Qin Mo could unilaterally designate contractors. This was just one example. Many matters were similar. Qin Mo aimed to support Qin Family Village and the neighboring areas, which naturally involved some nepotism. If even relatives and the elderly wouldn't help, who else would Qin Mo assist? Would he really work for those shareholders and help them make money? This fundamentally contradicted Qin Mo's original intentions, so there was no room for negotiation. Then why not just kick those professional managers out? Isn't it just a matter of losing some money? But there's no rush. Neither you nor I understand how to manage the company. We need to give those young people loyal to Qin Family Village a chance. Let them compete with those seasoned veterans. Only then can they learn more. As for the potential losses the company might incur, we can afford it. Qin Mo had already considered these possibilities clearly. Upon hearing Qin Mo's words, Qin Tianrui suddenly understood. Finding truly loyal talents for the Qin Family Village was far more important than some short-term losses. The turmoil surrounding the Qin Family Village enterprise swept through the group and then impacted them directly. However, Qin Mo was not concerned, as this too shall pass. After the Qingming Festival, the Dragon Boat Festival soon arrived. The Qin Family Village, located in the mountains, didn't have dragon boat racing, but it had evolved some other festive customs. The most popular among them were making zongzi and boiling mugwort. Mugwort is said to purify the air and has practical effects in repelling mosquitoes. More importantly, according to tradition, mugwort is used for warding off evil. So every household hangs mugwort above their door during the Dragon Boat Festival, and some even weave it into bouquets or wreaths to place on either side of the entrance. This morning, as Qin Mo woke up, he was greeted by the special aroma of mugwort. Qin Mo opened the door and stepped out of the small villa, only to see the elderly folks helping him arrange the mugwort. Grandma, Grandpa, why do you need to do this? I'll take care of it myself once I wake up. Who doesn't know you love to sleep in? This white mugwort has to be hung up in the morning to follow tradition. We've already arranged our own houses, so we came here to join the fun. Exactly. Xiao Mo, why are you being so polite with us? We used to boil mugwort to help you bathe when you were little. Qin Mo's face turned red as he vaguely remembered being stripped by these elderly folks when he was a young boy, having his body wiped down with mugwort-infused water. At that time, he found it amusing, but now he recalled running around naked without a shred of modesty. Oh, it's a pity that there are no children in Qin Family Village now. Those who come to work here with their parents probably don't appreciate these customs. Speaking of this matter, Xiaomo, what do you and Tianrui think? Now that everything is in place for Qin Family Village and your careers are on track, why aren't you getting married and having children? The mention of this topic made Qin Mo feel overwhelmed. Given his current financial situation, finding a wife would be quite easy, but most of them would likely have materialistic tendencies. The elderly could recommend some simple girls with good qualities of a virtuous wife. But to be honest, Qin Mo found it hard to be attracted to them. After all, he had seen and experienced quite a bit by now. So, it was impossible to force this. If he didn't meet the right person, there was nothing he could do. However, he couldn't express this to the elderly folks and could only change the subject. His gaze fell upon the mugwort hanging above the door, and an idea struck him. Grandparents, this mugwort must be a kind of traditional Chinese medicine. I remember there are quite a few medicinal herbs on the back mountain, right? Since we have some free time today, why don't we go dig up some herbs? When he was young, Qin Mo and a few other children who stayed in Qin Family Village had only a few ways to earn pocket money. They either went to the small river to catch some fish or into the mountains to dig up valuable medicinal herbs. Since wild medicinal herbs could survive there, it was possible to cultivate them on a larger scale. More importantly, Qin Mo had previously focused on introducing Western medicine, but forgot that traditional medicine was actually more suitable for the health of the elderly. Chapter 245. Qin Tianrui's worries. Sure, we haven't gone to the back mountain to collect herbs in a long time. We might have a big harvest. But today is the Dragon Boat Festival. So we need to take care of the important matters first, said Grandma with a smile. Upon hearing this, Qin Mo came back to his senses. In their village, it was customary for everyone to make a pot of rice dumplings together during the Dragon Boat Festival, which was one of Qin Mo's favorite activities as a child, fun and delicious. Qin Mo woke up late today, under the old locust tree in Uncle Guofu's yard. Everything needed had long been prepared. A large stone table was filled with fresh bamboo leaves, golden alkaline glutinous rice, and several plates of shiny cured meat and salted egg yolks, which were the most precious flavors of the Dragon Boat Festival in what was once a poor Qin family village. In recent years, Qin family village had become prosperous, but no one wanted to change the traditional recipe. Qin Mo had previously asked Qin Tianrui to record the traditional practices for various festivals in the village. Many of these traditions arose from the special circumstances of the past, largely due to poverty. However, those habits formed out of resource scarcity had now become the village's unique characteristics. Qin Mo is here. We are all ready. Grandma said we can't start without you, said someone. Now, Qin Mo had firmly taken on the role of the village head. Everything felt more meaningful with his involvement. In fact, it had been a long time since there was a title for a village head. The only village official was the village secretary, Qin Guofu. Most of the other members of the village committee were essentially helpers with no real formal positions. Do I still have this status? Qin Mo chuckled, looking around and noticing that Qin Tianrui, Qin Huayu, and Zhang Tingting had all come. Not only that, but Qin Tianrui's ex-wife and Qin Yangyang had also arrived. Yangyang, you don't have class today? Qin Mo asked curiously. Dragon Boat Festival is a holiday now. It was included in the statutory holidays a few years ago. Qin Tianrui replied with a smile. Qin Mo slapped his forehead, recalling that this was indeed the case. However, when he was working away from home, those shady factory bosses never mentioned such things. It was already good enough if they let you take off for Labor Day or National Day. The newly added day off for the Dragon Boat Festival, if it fell on a weekday, was treated as non-existent. There was no way they would let you take a holiday to go back home. Qin Mo walked over and ruffled Qin Yangyang's hair. His little nephew was adorable and would probably cause trouble for many girls when he grew up. Not far away, Qin Tianrui and his ex-wife were helping to move things for making dumplings, and the atmosphere between them was quite harmonious. Qin Mo smiled. This scene felt quite realistic. In the past, I heard Qin Tianrui say that his wife was spoiled and had never done any hard work, let alone help out in the countryside. After so many years of marriage, with their child in elementary school, she had rarely come back. But things were different now. With Qin Mo's support, Qin Tianrui was becoming more adept as the general manager of the Qin Family Village enterprise. Over the past year, the Qin Family Village brand had been thriving, and naturally, Qin Tianrui's career had also taken off. He was diligent and serious about everything, and he even learned from the talented graduates coming to the city. Several times, Qin Mo had seen Qin Tianrui earnestly asking his subordinates, who had graduated less than 2 years ago, for theoretical guidance at the company. Now, whether in practice or theory, he had reached a certain level of competence. After transforming into a senior management talent, Qin Tianrui's ex-wife began to contact him more frequently. Today, she came under the pretense of visiting Qin Yangyang, wanting to join in making rice dumplings. Qin Tianrui quickly noticed Qin Mo's scrutinizing gaze. He put down his work and walked over, pulling Qin Mo aside a few steps away from the elders. Brother Rui, what are you being so secretive about? Qin Mo asked, though he already sensed Qin Tianrui's intentions. It was highly likely that his brother wanted to remarry and was coming to ask for his opinion. Qin Tianrui didn't hide it anymore and said, Qin Mo, you've seen the situation. Do you think I'm being foolish for considering going back? When it comes to feelings, there's no such thing as being foolish, but I need to point something out. The divorce was because she cheated, and you ended up with nothing. This isn't just about losing or gaining. It reflects her character. Now that she sees your situation improving, she wants to come back to you. Qin Mo didn't want to say it too harshly, but he also didn't want Qin Tianrui to suffer a loss. Qin Tianrui smiled awkwardly, scratching his head, and said, there's a misunderstanding. In fact, she was forced by her parents to divorce me and then pressured to date someone from a redevelopment project. At that time, I got angry, and her parents added fuel to the fire to make me sign the divorce papers. Is that true? Qin Mo was taken aback. How poorly must Qin Tianrui have been treated by his ex-father-in-law for them to accuse him of being the reason for the divorce? Sighing, Qin Tianrui recalled his own struggles as a son-in-law and lamented, still, if she didn't truly like me back then, as a rural boy, I wouldn't have had the chance to marry into their family. I believe she still has feelings for me. As for remarrying, I wouldn't go back to live with them. If she is willing to stay in our Qin family village, then we can discuss it. No matter what. I can't go serve those two old folks again, forcing their daughter to divorce, and then putting a green hat on my head. I've been through that once. I won't be tormented a second time. All right, as long as you have made up your mind. Remarrying would definitely be a good thing for Yang Yang. Qin Mo didn't press further. Whatever complications arose, with his current capabilities, he could help Qin Tianrui navigate through them. With Qin Mo's words, the insecurity in Qin Tianrui's heart vanished, and he immediately broke into a broad smile. Logically, I shouldn't have to ask you about this, but for some reason, having your approval feels as reassuring as getting recognition from an elder, Qin Tianrui joked. Come on, don't make me sound like I'm decades older than you. Qin Mo refused to accept that kind of hierarchy. Qin Tianrui didn't say much more and happily ran back to chat with his ex-wife. The two of them looked back at Qin Mo, their eyes filled with gratitude. Qin Mo no longer looked at them. At that moment, the elderly ladies were seated in a circle, already starting the work of making rice dumplings. Although the second grandmother was over 70, her hands were still very nimble. As her fingers flew, the bamboo leaves were transformed into funnel-shaped little boats. The two novices, Qin Fengyu and Zhang Tingting, were learning earnestly beside her. But they could never manage to wrap the dumpling tightly. After a long while, Zhang Tingting produced a dumpling that looked like an inflated balloon, bulging out so much that shaking it would cause the rice inside to spill out. Chapter 246. Leading the team to gather herbs for health, the seventh grandmother smiled as she approached, her wrinkled hands taking the inflated dumpling from Zhang Tingting. Child, your dumpling is not wrapped correctly. When we make dumplings, we emphasize the importance of tightness. Just like in life, we need to gather our spirit in one place. Saying this, she unwrapped Zhang Tingting's dumpling, gently pinched it in her hands, and the leaves adhered closely. After adding some more glutinous rice and cured meat, wrapping it with a few loops of bamboo leaf string, a well-defined dumpling was completed. The key is in the hand technique. You have to hold the leaves like I do for better operation. Zhang Tingting nodded repeatedly and glanced over at Qin Mo. Qin Mo was indeed proficient. He had lost count of how many dumplings he had made since childhood, and now he was just secretly adding a few more pieces of meat inside. Soon, 50 or 60 dumplings were wrapped up. Qin Guofu had already set up an ancient-style stone stove, and the fire crackled in the stove. In no time, the water in the large iron pot began to bubble. Put in the dumplings. The elderly called out when they saw the right moment. The little one, Qin Yangyang, also stepped forward to help, sliding the wrapped dumplings into the boiling water. The fragrance of the bamboo leaves mixed with the sweetness of the glutinous rice and the saltiness of the cured meat wafted in the mountain breeze, attracting the yellow dog at the village entrance to sit up, drooling all over. Qin Mo and Qin Tianrui helped to fish the dumplings out and laid them on a bamboo tray to cool. Qin Fengyu unwrapped one. Droplets of water rolling off the bamboo leaves, revealing the glossy, glutinous rice. Taking a bite, the richness of the cured meat and the softness of the rice melted in his mouth, along with a faint herbal aroma that was unique to the village's Dragon Boat Festival flavor. Qin Yangyang, still in his childish voice, shouted hot while eating, his eyes crescent-shaped with joy, declaring this was the most delicious dumpling he had ever eaten. After filling up on dumplings, everyone gathered in the activity center for a midday rest and chat. Once the sun started to descend a bit from overhead, Qin Mo organized everyone to set off to the back mountain to gather herbs. Brother Mo, what made you suddenly think of going to the back mountain to gather herbs? Qin Huayu and Zhang Tingting approached with curiosity. I had a sudden idea, but I want to establish a traditional Chinese medicine clinic in the village. A traditional Chinese medicine clinic? Qin Tianrui also walked over, listening with increasing curiosity. Traditional Chinese medicine is different from Western medicine in that it lacks standardization, which is the biggest difference between the two medical systems. In many cases, standardized Western medicine can process complex issues in a systematic way. However, in some difficult and complicated cases, non-standardized traditional Chinese medicine can yield remarkable results. This includes the management of many chronic diseases and a wealth of health-preserving knowledge. From the perspective of traditional Chinese medicine, each person's condition is unique. The impact of a particular disease or medication on a patient must be judged according to the patient's own conditions and circumstances. This judgment is often made subjectively by the practitioner, who may only be able to provide some reasoning for it, relying more on experience. In the past, an old Chinese doctor would have dozens of apprentices, and without studying for a decade or two, one would not qualify to treat patients. Nowadays, after studying for 5 or 6 years in a traditional Chinese medicine college, one dares to call themselves a practitioner, following the standardized methods of Western medicine. Not only does this tarnish the name of traditional Chinese medicine, but the treatment outcomes are often inferior to pure Western medicine. Jiang Wang complained a bit, but he actually had thoughts of inheriting traditional Chinese medicine. He happened to have the right conditions, as the system's rewards included relevant elements. Knowledge and experience gained from the system are more valuable than spending 20 years with an old Chinese doctor. You all know the situation of our elderly family members. After decades of hard work, they have no habit of regular checkups or health maintenance. Although there is now a hospital in the village, it is purely Western medicine, only treating illnesses. When Qin Imo mentioned this, the young people understood. The elderly, who were young once, are now in their 50s or 60s, while the older ones, like the second grandmother and third grandfather, are already in their 70s. Although medical advancements have increased average life expectancy, that refers to city dwellers whose bodies have endured much hardship. The elderly in Qin family village have spent their lives working hard. Who doesn't have some minor health issues? Those small ailments cannot be treated at the hospital, and when they develop into serious problems, it's uncertain if they can be cured. So, Mo Go, are you thinking of setting up a traditional Chinese healthcare center? Zhang Tingting asked, somewhat understanding. It doesn't matter what it's called. The main purpose is to help the elderly improve their health. The good days in Qin family village are just beginning, and we need to ensure the elderly can enjoy a few more days of comfort. Qin Imo replied. In the afternoon forest, the heat dissipated, and the hidden birds flew back to the branches, chirping joyfully. The abundant oxygen from photosynthesis invigorated everyone. Qin Imo led the group ahead, his eyes scanning the surroundings like a radar, not missing any potentially useful herbs. Suddenly, he stopped at a steep hillside, carefully pushed aside layers of vines, and unearthed a uniquely shaped plant. Its leaves were deep green with finely serrated edges, its stem covered with tiny hairs, and at the top, it bloomed a cluster of light purple flowers, resembling a string of delicate little bells. Qin Yangyang appeared the most lively. He approached Qin Imo, looking at the unique little flower in his hand, and curiously asked, Uncle Imo, what kind of flower is this? This is not just a simple flower. It is also a good remedy for old ailments. Holding up the plant, Qin Imo turned to Uncle San and said, Uncle San, you are truly lucky. This 7-leaf branch flower is a precious herbal medicine with special pain-relieving properties. Don't you have chronic rheumatism? When the wind blows and it rains, your knee joints feel sore and painful, right? Crushing the 7-leaf branch flower and applying it externally can alleviate that. Uncle San, Qin Huayu, widened his eyes in surprise and examined it closely. This herb looks strange. Can it really cure my chronic rheumatism? I've been dealing with this condition for nearly half my life and have never heard of any medicine that can cure it. In Qin Huayu's view, chronic rheumatism was almost like a terminal illness, practically untreatable. When it flared up, he could only grit his teeth and endure. In fact, many elderly people in Qin village shared similar thoughts about their ailments. Minor issues didn't require treatment, and major ones couldn't be cured anyway. So they might as well wait for death. Rather than waste money on the county hospital, it was better to save it for good food and nutrition, which would naturally help them recover. Qin Imo understood the mindset of the elderly, which is why he brought everyone up the mountain today. First, to get them to move their legs and feet, and second, to convey the message that many chronic and old ailments could not only be treated but also didn't cost much. Mountain herbs could do the trick. Only by instilling this idea in the elderly would they be willing to cooperate in managing their health. When Qin Imo heard Qin Huayu's doubts, he patiently explained, Uncle San, the 7-leaf branch flower grows in a unique environment. It prefers to thrive in the damp, shady areas of the mountains, so it's not often seen. However, it is a treasure in traditional Chinese medicine. Remember its appearance. There should be more around here. Really? Then I need to search carefully, Uncle San, Qin Huayu said, feeling invigorated. Although rheumatism isn't considered a disease, it can be excruciating. It's a result of neglecting it in youth, leading to excessive wear and tear on the joints and bones. In Western medicine, this condition is often deemed untreatable, requiring surgery to apply an artificial membrane to the bones. Just the thought of such surgery is horrifying, and naturally, Qin Huaiyu would avoid such suffering. So for many years, he had relied on sheer willpower to endure. Hearing that there was a remedy immediately lifted his spirits. Uncle Wu, who was listening nearby, was also captivated. Seeing Qin Mo speak with confidence, he asked, Qin Mo, when did you learn about traditional Chinese medicine? What about my chronic back pain? It hurts so much on damp, cold days. Is there any herbal remedy in the mountains for that? Of course there is. Seeing that the elderly were interested, Qin Mo naturally spared no effort. He quickly found some long grass nearby and explained its medicinal properties and how to use it to Uncle Wu. Soon, other elderly people gathered around as well. Many of their ailments had been dismissed, either not taken seriously or considered untreatable or too expensive to fix, so they had simply endured. Now that Qin Mo provided various simple and effective herbal remedies, the elderly's enthusiasm for treating their ailments began to rise. Seizing the moment, Qin Mo proposed setting up a traditional Chinese medicine clinic in the village. He initially thought that the elderly might oppose it, fearing that he would waste money. To everyone's surprise, the elderly agreed immediately. Xiao Mo, you might not know, but in our surrounding villages, there used to be an old traditional Chinese medicine practitioner. Granny Qi recounted. It turns out that in this mountainous area, there was once a family of traditional medicine practitioners with a long history. Several generations had studied medicine and were somewhat respected in the villages. However, as time passed, the identity of these local practitioners became quite awkward. There was an incident where someone died after treatment, and the local authorities came to arrest the practitioner. We knew very well that the patient was doomed regardless of treatment. And the old practitioner tried his best to help, only to be blamed by the patient's family. As Granny Qi spoke about this, the other elderly also recalled the incident, chiming in with their thoughts. I remember that the charge from the authorities was practicing medicine without a license, right? Yes, it was indeed practicing without a license. And they forced the old practitioner to pay an exorbitant amount. Isn't that ridiculous? A life was at stake, and they were worried about licenses? That old practitioner had saved countless villagers over the years. Why didn't those he helped demand a license back then? Grandpa Qin expressed his anger about this. He knew that family of traditional practitioners and was aware that the old practitioner, unable to bear the stress, had passed away years ago. However, it wouldn't be fair to blame all patients. Many people had pleaded for the old practitioner back then, but the patient's family held on stubbornly, insisting on compensation. Upon hearing this, Qin Mo began to understand the situation. Despite the urbanization of Greater China for decades, in poor villages like Qin Family Village, electricity had only been available for about 20 years. In the younger days of the elderly, there were no modern hospitals, and even basic utilities were lacking. When people fell ill back then, what else could they rely on but local practitioners? This family specialized in traditional medicine, and treating illnesses had become second nature for them, saving countless lives over generations. Suddenly, with the advent of electricity, the issue of medical licenses arose, which no one had anticipated. It was unfortunate that at such a critical moment, they were caught in this predicament. I heard that this family still has descendants. Qin Mo, since you're looking to establish a traditional medicine clinic, why not help the descendants of that old practitioner? The elderly were thinking of ways to repay the old practitioner's kindness. Back then, many villagers with ailments were treated by that family, and seeing the old practitioner pass away helplessly left a bitter taste in their hearts. Today, hearing that Qin Mo wanted to set up a health clinic in the village, they brought this up. The benefactor of the grandparents is also the benefactor of our Qin family village, and it's only natural to show gratitude. Qin Mo agreed. The next day, he went to visit the family of the ancient practitioner. They lived on another hill not far from Qin family village, but the mountain path was extremely difficult to traverse, and vehicles couldn't reach it. After driving to the foot of the mountain, Qin Mo had to walk the rest of the way. Along the way, he saw a few households, but most were empty, with only a few elderly people remaining. It seems that this village is similar to our Qin family village. The environment is too harsh, and all the able-bodied young people have left. Qin Mo smiled at the few elderly people who remained and asked, Grandpa, Grandma, do you know of a medical family with the surname Hu? There are many people with the surname Hu in this mountain, but when it comes to medicine, it can only be the family of Tsonggu on the mountainside. Right, Qin Mo responded. From the elderly couple, he learned that the old Chinese medicine doctor who had passed away due to anger was named Hu Kong. You need to take this small path. That place is too remote. No one has moved down to the foot of the mountain for generations, as they say it's easier to gather herbs. The elders clearly held a lot of respect for Tsonggu. Qin Mo nodded to show he understood, and then followed the direction indicated by the elderly people. There weren't even proper stone steps here, just some relatively flat stones half buried in the mud serving as footholds. And the steep incline was definitely a physical challenge for the elderly. However, Qin Mo's body had been enhanced by the system, so walking this mountain path was no trouble for him. Half an hour later, Qin Mo finally arrived at a platform halfway up the mountain. There was a self-built wooden house here, and in front of it were many medicinal materials drying in the sun. Qin Mo could already smell the unique fragrance of Chinese medicinal herbs from afar. Is this the descendant of the old Chinese medicine doctor? Curious, Qin Mo walked closer. But the house was empty. The wooden door was unlocked, and he pushed it open to enter. The interior was simply furnished with a wooden table, a wooden bed, and a corner filled with burlap sacks, all exuding a rustic charm. At that moment, a figure appeared at the door. It was a girl around 20 years old. Her appearance caught Qin Mo's attention immediately. She wore a faded blue shirt with rolled-up sleeves, revealing arms covered in dirt, and her jeans were also full of grass clippings. Clearly having just returned from deep in the mountains, Qin Mo noticed a bamboo basket on her back, which indeed contained freshly picked mountain herbs. Who are you?